Madrid International Airport buzzed with activity that autumn afternoon. Amid the hustle of hurried travelers, rolling suitcases, and boarding announcements, Miguel Angel Soto walked with firm steps along the VIP corridor leading to the private terminal. His imposing figure, clad in a tailored Italian suit, contrasted with the lightness of his stride, as if the weight of running Nexus Technologies, one of Europe's most important tech companies, placed no burden on his shoulders. "The most significant moments of our lives often occur when we least expect them," he reflected, while distractedly checking messages on his phone. It was a phrase his grandmother used to repeat when he was a child, but only now, at 42, did he begin to understand its full dimension. The reflection of the setting sun filtered through the airport's wide windows, bathing the polished marble floor with a golden light that seemed to announce something extraordinary. Miguel Angel looked up from his phone just in time to observe a female figure kneeling to pick up some fallen papers next to a cleaning cart. It was an instant, barely a blink in the continuity of time, but enough for the entire world to stop. Miguel Angel's heart began to beat violently, as if wanting to escape from his chest. That silhouette, that gesture, the way the woman tucked a rebellious strand of hair behind her ear. It couldn't be. It was impossible. And yet... "Elena?" The word left his lips like a prayer, like a whisper torn from the depths of his soul. The woman turned slowly, her face partially hidden by the shadows of the sunset. When her eyes finally met Miguel Angel's, 15 years of absence vanished in an instant. Time, that silent thief of moments, seemed to return everything stolen in a single glance. Elena Martinez, in her blue uniform from the cleaning company, with a badge hanging from her chest, stood motionless. Recognition came to her eyes like a slow but unstoppable wave, transforming her expression from surprise into something more complex, a mixture of disbelief, nostalgia, and an old pain that had never completely healed. Around them, the airport continued its frenetic activity, oblivious to the emotional cataclysm that had just been unleashed at that precise point in the universe. But for Miguel Angel and Elena, the entire world had been reduced to this moment, to this impossible reunion that defied all probability. Sometimes, destiny has mysterious ways of reminding us that some stories never truly end. They just pause before the next chapter. Miguel Angel Soto had not always been the powerful CEO who now regularly appeared on the covers of economic magazines. Those who knew him only through his public image, a pragmatic businessman, brilliant strategist and relentless negotiator, could hardly imagine the idealistic young man he had been 15 years ago. In his office on the 40th floor of the imposing Nexus Technologies building in Madrid's financial center, Miguel Angel often contemplated the city at his feet while his mind inevitably traveled to the past. The glass and steel walls surrounding him seemed a perfect metaphor for the life he had built, transparent in appearance but impenetrable inside. "Mr. Soto, your video conference with Tokyo begins in 5 minutes, announced Javier Ramos, his personal assistant for the past decade, interrupting his thoughts. Javier was possibly the only person who knew more than just the magnate's facade. Tall, efficient, and obsessively discreet, he had been a silent witness to the moments of weakness that Miguel Angel never showed to the outside world. "Cancel everything," Miguel Angel responded, with a voice that admitted no reply, without taking his gaze from the window. Javier visibly tensed. In 10 years he had never heard his boss cancel a meeting of such importance. "Excuse me? The merger with Yamatsu Tech depends on this call, sir. We've been preparing for months and—" "I said cancel everything, Javier," Miguel Angel repeated, finally turning to face his assistant. "I just saw her. No further specification was necessary." Javier's face instantly paled, as if he had seen a ghost. "Who, sir?" he asked, although they both perfectly knew the answer. "Elena. She was at the airport wearing a cleaning uniform." Miguel Angel ran a hand through his hair, where some premature grey at the temples evidenced the price of success. "All these years, Javier, all these years searching for her, and she was here, in Madrid, 15 minutes from this office." The silence that followed was charged with tension. Javier carefully placed the tablet he was holding on the glass desk and adjusted his glasses, a gesture he typically made when feeling uncomfortable. "Perhaps you should sit down, sir," he suggested with a cautious voice. "Did you know?" The question was direct, like a shot. Javier held his boss's gaze for a second before lowering his eyes. Not exactly, sir. What does not exactly mean? Miguel Angel's voice, usually controlled, trembled slightly. Either you knew or you didn't. I knew she was in Madrid, Javier finally admitted, but not that she worked at the airport. I was never supposed to tell you. I gave my word. Miguel Angel felt the ground moving beneath his feet. For 15 years, he had trusted Javier more than anyone. He had entrusted him not only with his business, but also with his personal search, the one he had financed through the Hope Foundation, ostensibly dedicated to social causes, but secretly allocating resources to find Elena. To whom did you give your word, Javier? To her? Miguel Angel clenched his fists. Or to my father? The mention of Fernando Soto, who had passed away 5 years ago, seemed to make the air even denser. To both, Javier answered with a whisper. Your father hired me precisely for that purpose, sir, to keep you focused on the company and away from her. Miguel Angel's world wobbled with this revelation. His own father, the man who had taught him everything about honor and loyalty, had orchestrated the most painful separation of his life? I want all the details, Javier. Absolutely everything you know about Elena Martinez. Where she lives, what she's done these 15 years, why she disappeared. Miguel Angel approached his assistant, his voice transforming into that of the relentless negotiator who had built an empire. And I want it now. Javier nodded slowly, understanding that the time had come to reveal all the secrets he had kept for a decade. There's something else you should know, sir, he added cautiously. Elena is not a simple cleaning employee. Miguel Angel raised an eyebrow, inviting him to continue. She's the owner of Esperanza Services, the company she works for, a company that primarily employs women in vulnerable situations. Javier made a significant pause. And she has a daughter, sir, a 14-year-old daughter. The revelation fell on Miguel Angel like lightning, suddenly illuminating a past darkened by lies and opening the door to questions he had never dared to formulate. Elena Martinez closed the door of her modest apartment in the Vallecas neighborhood and leaned against it, as if physically trying to block the memories threatening to invade her. The encounter with Miguel Angel had been like an earthquake shaking the foundations of the orderly life she had so carefully built over the last 15 years. Mum, are you okay? Lucia's voice came from the small living room where she was studying, surrounded by books. Elena forced herself to smile as she entered the apartment. Lucia, who had just turned 14, was the spitting image of her father. The same intense eyes, the same concentrated expression when something caught her interest, the same smile capable of lighting up an entire room. Yes, honey, it's just been a long day. Eleanor put her bag on the table and approached to kiss her daughter's forehead. How's that science project coming along? Lucia began to enthusiastically explain the details of her work on renewable energy, but Elena could only half listen. Her mind was trapped in the airport, in that moment when her eyes met Miguel Angel's after so long. How was it possible that she still felt that electric current running through her body just by seeing him? 15 years should have been enough to forget, to bury those youthful feelings under layers and layers of daily responsibilities. And yet, it took just a moment for everything to return, the pain, the betrayal, but also, and this was the most terrifying, that love she had never managed to completely extinguish. The phone's ring interrupted her thoughts. It was an unknown number. Elena hesitated a moment before answering. Hello? Elena, it's me. Miguel Angel's voice, deeper than in her memories but unmistakable, left her breathless. I need to see you. Talk to you. Please. Silence stretched between them like an abyss impossible to cross with words. How did you get my number? Elena finally asked, trying to make her voice sound firm. That doesn't matter now. Miguel Angel's voice sounded urgent, almost desperate. 15 years, Elena. You owe me at least a conversation. Elena closed her eyes, feeling the weight of decisions made, truths concealed, letters never sent. I don't owe you anything, Miguel Angel, she responded, with a coldness she didn't feel. You made your decision a long time ago. I made mine. My decision? Miguel Angel's voice broke slightly. You disappeared without a word, Elena, without an explanation. One day we were planning our future, and the next, you simply vanished. Elena looked at Lucia, who was still focused on her studies, unaware of the conversation that was altering her mother's world. It wasn't like that. And you know it, Elena murmured, lowering her voice so her daughter wouldn't hear. I received your message very clearly when you decided your future in the company was more important than us. What are you talking about? The confusion in Miguel Angel's voice seemed genuine. I never... Elena, please, we need to talk in person. There are things you don't know that you don't understand. I understand perfectly, Miguel Angel. She cut him off. I've understood for 15 years while raising our Dao... Elena stopped abruptly, horrified by what she had been about to reveal. On the other end of the line, Miguel Angel's silence took on a different quality, as if he had held his breath. Our what, Elena? He finally asked, with a barely audible voice. Were you going to say our daughter? Panic seized Elena. She shouldn't have answered that call. She wasn't prepared for this conversation. I have to hang up. Please don't call me again. Elena hung up before Miguel Angel could respond. With trembling hands, she put the phone on the table and headed to the small kitchen, needing distance, a moment to regain her composure. How could she have been so careless? 15 years keeping a secret, 15 years protecting Lucia from the truth, and she had nearly revealed everything in a moment of weakness. From the living room, Lucia's voice startled her. Who was that, Mom? Elena took a deep breath before answering. No one important, honey. Just a client with a question. The lie burned in her throat. She had spent years building a life based on honesty, teaching her daughter the value of truth, while hiding the greatest truth of all, the identity of her father. The phone rang again. This time it was Carmen, her partner and friend for more than a decade. Elena, we have a problem, Carmen announced without preamble. I just received a very strange call. Someone wants to buy Esperanza services. An offer we couldn't refuse, they say. What? Who would want to buy our company? Elena's bewilderment was genuine. You won't believe it, Carmen replied with a mixture of astonishment and concern. Nexus Technologies. Yes, Miguel Angel Soto's company. Isn't that the name of the... Yes, Elena interrupted, feeling the ground opening beneath her feet. It's him. The war had begun, and Elena knew with a terrifying certainty that this time she couldn't simply disappear. The headquarters of Esperanza Services occupied the ground floor of a rehabilitated old industrial building in the Carabanchel district. Far from the luxury and ostentation of the corporate skyscrapers in the financial center, its facilities reflected the company's philosophy, functional, welcoming, and with a clear purpose. Elena nervously paced the small meeting room, mentally reviewing the arguments she would use to reject the purchase offer. Beside her, Carmen reviewed the documents they had received that morning. A formal acquisition proposal from Nexus Technologies with a figure that multiplied the real value of Esperanza Services tenfold. It's insane, Elena, Carmen insisted, pointing at the amount. With this money, we could expand throughout Spain, hire hundreds more women, create that training program you've always dreamed of. He's not trying to buy the company, Carmen, Elena interrupted firmly. He's trying to buy me. Carmen sighed, putting the documents on the table. It's been 15 years, Elena. Don't you think it's time to talk to him? To tell him about Lucia, at least? Elena visibly tensed. Carmen was the only person who knew the whole truth about her history with Miguel Angel, about the pregnancy she discovered weeks after their separation, about the decision to raise her daughter alone rather than face rejection from the man who, according to the letters she never received, had chosen his career over their love. It's not that simple, Carmen. You don't understand. What don't I understand? Carmen stood up, confronting her. I understand that you've spent 15 years building this company with your own hands, sacrificing everything to give your daughter a future. I understand that you're the strongest woman I know, but I also understand that Lucia has the right to know her father and that you... Carmen softened her tone. You never stopped loving him, no matter how much you tried to deny it. The silence that followed was interrupted by a soft knock on the door. Pilar, the receptionist, poked her head in with a worried expression. Elena, there's someone insisting on seeing you. He says it's urgent and... She couldn't finish her sentence. Behind her, the imposing figure of Miguel Angel Soto burst into the meeting room. He wore a less formal suit than the day before, but his presence filled the room in a way no outfit could achieve. I need to talk to you, Elena, he declared without preamble. Alone. Carmen looked alternately at Elena and Miguel Angel, perceiving the electric tension between them. I think I'll go check next week's schedules, she murmured, hurriedly gathering her documents. A pleasure to meet you, Mr. Soto. When the door closed behind Carmen, the silence between Elena and Miguel Angel became almost tangible. He observed her with an overwhelming intensity, as if trying to recover every detail of her that the years had erased from his memory. "I'm not going to sell my company," Elena announced, finally breaking the silence. "No matter how much you offer." Miguel Angel smiled slightly, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I'm not here for the company, Elena. I'm here for you, for us." "There is no us, Miguel Angel," she replied, crossing her arms. "There was, 15 years ago, but it ended when you chose your father's empire over me." Confusion crossed Miguel Angel's face. "What are you talking about? I never chose anything over you. You disappeared, Elena, without a word, without an explanation. I looked for you for months, for years." Elena looked at him incredulously. "You looked for me? After writing to tell me you needed to focus on your career? After telling me that what we had was beautiful, but that you had to be practical about your future?" "I never wrote such a thing," Miguel Angel protested, moving closer to her. "Never." The conviction in his voice made Elena falter for the first time. "I received your letter 3 days after our last night together," she insisted, though with less firmness. "You said your father had offered you an important position in the company on the condition that you ended things with me, that it was best for both of us." "Elena, listen to me." Miguel Angel gently took her by the shoulders. "I never, ever wrote that letter. What I received was a message from you saying you needed time, space to think about our future. And when I went to look for you at your apartment days later, you had disappeared, without a trace." Elena's eyes filled with tears as she tried to process this information. Was it possible? Had they been manipulated in this way? "Who?" she began, but the answer was already forming in her mind. "My father," Miguel Angel confirmed bitterly. "I discovered yesterday that he orchestrated our entire separation. He hired Javier specifically to keep me away from you, to ensure I never found you." Elena moved away from him, needing distance to assimilate this revelation that altered 15 years of her personal history. "Why? Why would he do something like that?" "Because you came from a humble family," Miguel Angel replied with brutal honesty. "Because for him, the Soto name should mix only with others of equal prestige. Because he saw you as a distraction that would take me away from the future he had planned for me." Elena brought a hand to her mouth, remembering the few occasions she had coincided with Fernando Soto, the coldness with which he had treated her, the seemingly casual questions about her family, her origins. "My God," she murmured, collapsing into a chair. "All these years thinking you had abandoned me out of ambition, and I thinking you had grown tired of a student with no clear future," Miguel Angel completed with a touch of irony. "What a pair of idiots we were, right?" Despite the gravity of the moment, a small smile appeared on Elena's lips. It was the kind of comment that the Miguel Angel of her youth would have made, a sign that, under the successful businessman, something of the boy she had fallen in love with still remained. But immediately the smile disappeared, replaced by an expression of concern. "Miguel Angel, there's something you should know, something important." He looked at her expectantly, perceiving the change in her tone. "It's about what I almost said on the phone yesterday," Elena continued, gathering all her courage. "We have a daughter, Miguel Angel. Her name is Lucia, and she's 14 years old." Although Javier had already revealed this information to him, hearing it from Elena's lips was like receiving an electric shock. Miguel Angel stood absolutely still, processing the impact of those words, the magnitude of what they meant. "A daughter," he finally repeated, his voice barely a whisper. "I have a 14-year-old daughter I've never met." The vulnerability in his expression moved Elena to her core. This wasn't the powerful CEO, the business titan whose face appeared in economic magazines. This was the Miguel Angel she had loved, the sensitive man beneath the armor of success. "I'm sorry," she said sincerely. "When I discovered I was pregnant, I tried to contact you, but I had already received your letter, or what I believed was your letter. I thought I would be a burden to you, a complication in your bright new life." Miguel Angel ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Elena remembered so well from their university days. "What is she like?" he asked with genuine curiosity. "Does she look like you?" "She's your spitting image," Elena replied with a nostalgic smile. She has your intelligence, your determination, even that way you furrow your brow when something doesn't make sense to you. A silence charged with unrealized possibilities settled between them. "I want to meet her, Elena," Miguel Angel finally declared, "if you'll allow me." Before Elena could respond, the door burst open, and an elegant woman with perfectly styled hair and a designer suit stormed into the room. "Here you are," she exclaimed, addressing Miguel Angel. "Can you explain why you cancelled the meeting with the Japanese investors? The entire board is waiting for explanations, and you disappear without—" The woman stopped upon noticing Elena's presence, examining her from head to toe with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. "Oh, excuse me, I didn't know you were in a meeting." "Sophia," Miguel Angel visibly tensed, "this is Elena Martinez, Director of Esperanza Services." Sophia's eyes narrowed with recognition. "Elena? The same Elena you once mentioned?" Her tone was light, but there was a dangerous note beneath the surface. "The same," Miguel Angel confirmed, his expression unreadable. Elena observed the exchange with growing discomfort, noticing the engagement ring that glittered on Sophia's left hand. Of course, it was logical. 15 years had passed. Naturally, Miguel Angel had moved on with his life. "Sophia is my fiancée," Miguel Angel explained, as if he had read her thoughts. "We're getting married in the spring." Elena's world, which was just beginning to piece itself back together after the revelations of the last few minutes, wobbled again. "Pleased to finally meet you," Sophia said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Miguel Angel never talks about his past, but your name appeared in some old press clippings I found." The way she said it made it clear she had thoroughly investigated her fiancé's life, and that Elena's existence was not precisely a welcome surprise. "Congratulations on your engagement," Elena replied with all the dignity she could muster. "If you'll excuse me, I have pending matters to attend to." As she headed toward the door, Miguel Angel's voice stopped her. "Elena, we haven't finished our conversation." She turned to face him, aware of Sophia's evaluating gaze. "On the contrary, Miguel Angel, I think everything has been said." And she added, looking directly at Sophia, "The past is the past. We have both built our separate lives, and that's how it should remain." Miguel Angel's expression hardened. "You know that's not true. Not after what you've told me." "What exactly has she told you?" Sophia intervened, her voice sharp as a knife. Elena took advantage of the distraction to leave the room, closing the door behind her, before the tears she had been holding back began to freely flow down her cheeks. 15 years had not been enough to forget Miguel Angel Soto, and now, when she finally discovered that everything had been a manipulation, that he had never abandoned her as she believed, it turned out it was too late. He was moving on with his life, engaged to a woman who clearly belonged to his world of privilege and power. What Elena couldn't imagine, as she walked away down the corridor of her modest company, was that the war for her future, for her daughter's future, and for Miguel Angel's heart had only just begun. A week after the tumultuous reunion, Elena contemplated the dawn from the small terrace of her apartment. It was Saturday, and Lucia was still asleep, taking advantage of the rest after an intense week of exams. The steaming coffee between her hands was an insufficient comfort for the storm of thoughts that had tormented her since Miguel Angel had returned to her life. The doorbell startled her. Who could it be at that hour? She left the cup on the railing and hurried to answer before the sound woke Lucia. "Yes. Good morning, Mrs. Martinez." The formal voice belonged to a stranger. "I have a delivery for you." Eleanor went downstairs curiously. A young man in a courier uniform waited in the entrance hall, holding a small package. "I need your signature, please." Intrigued, Eleanor signed the receipt and returned to her apartment with the package in her hands. There was no sender, just her name carefully written. She opened it cautiously. Inside, she found an old carved wooden box that she immediately recognized. Her heart skipped a beat. It was the music box that Miguel Angel had given her on their first anniversary, with a small ballerina that spun to the sound of Debussy's Clair de Lune, the same box she had left behind in her hasty flight 15 years ago. Next to it was a handwritten note. "I found it among my things years ago. I always knew that someday it would return to its rightful hands. Some melodies never stop playing, no matter how much time passes. M.A." Elena opened the box with trembling hands. The music began to play. instantly transporting her to those days of youth, to afternoons studying together in the park, to promises whispered under the stars. And then she noticed something different. Inside the box, where before there was only the ballerina, now there was a small envelope. She opened it and extracted an old photograph. It was her, asleep over her notes in the university library, with hair falling over her face and an expression of absolute peace. She had never seen this image before. On the back, in Miguel Angel's youthful handwriting, an inscription: "The moment I knew I wanted to wake up next to this face every morning for the rest of my life. May 12th, 2010. Tears blurred her vision. That small gesture, so intimate, so full of shared memories, moved her more deeply than any costly demonstration of economic power. This was the Miguel Angel she remembered, the one who saw beauty in everyday moments, who kept their memories like irreplaceable treasures. Her phone vibrated with a message. "Did you receive it? Does it still work?" Eleanor contemplated the screen, unsure what to respond. Finally, honesty prevailed over caution. Yes to both questions. "Thank you for keeping it all these years." The response came almost immediately. "I kept much more than a music box, Elena." Those simple words contained a world of meanings. Elena closed her eyes, allowing herself for a moment to imagine what their lives would have been like without Fernando Soto's intervention, without the lies that had separated them. Would they now be sharing a family breakfast with Lucia? Would they have built together that house with a garden they talked so much about in their university days? A second message interrupted her reflections. "I would like to meet Lucia, Eleanor. It's all I ask. A coffee, a walk, whatever you consider appropriate. I just want to see her, talk to her." Elena looked toward the hallway leading to the room where her daughter still slept. Lucia had always asked about her father, and she had constructed a vague story about a young student who had gone abroad without knowing about the pregnancy. As Lucia grew older, her questions had become more specific, harder to evade. Did she have the right to continue hiding the truth now that she knew Miguel Angel had never really abandoned her? "I need time, Miguel Angel. I have to talk to her first. Prepare her. It's not fair to spring this on her without warning." The response took longer this time, as if he were carefully considering his words. "I understand. I'll wait as long as necessary. Thank you, Elena." There was so much restraint in that simple message, so much repressed emotion, that Elena felt a lump in her throat. She imagined Miguel Angel on the other side of the city, in his luxurious penthouse, holding the phone with the same mixture of hope and fear that she felt. "Mum, who are you talking to so early?" Lucia's voice startled her. Her daughter was at the kitchen threshold, rubbing her eyes with the back of her hand in a gesture that painfully reminded Elena of the university student Miguel Angel she had known. "No one important, honey." The lie was becoming an uncomfortable habit. "Just a work message." Lucia nodded distractedly and headed toward the refrigerator. Then she noticed the music box on the table. "What's this?" "It's beautiful." Her fingers caressed the carved surface. "A memory from long ago," Elena replied softly. "It was given to me by someone who was very special to me." Lucia looked at her with sudden interest. "My father?" she asked directly. Elena felt that the moment had come. She couldn't continue postponing the truth. "Yes," she finally admitted. "Your father gave it to me when we were students." Lucia's eyes, so similar to Miguel Angel's, lit up with a mixture of surprise and hope. "Will you tell me about him? Really? You always change the subject when I ask." Eleanor took her daughter's hands in hers, preparing for the most important conversation of their lives. "Sit down, honey. There's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you a long time ago." Meanwhile, at the other end of the city, Miguel Angel contemplated his phone screen with a mixture of anxiety and hope. The day before, he had made a momentous decision by sending that music box. It was his way of building a bridge over the 15-year abyss that separated them. "What are you doing up so early?" Sophia's voice startled him. His fiancée appeared at the threshold of his office, wrapped in an elegant silk nightgown with a curious expression on her face. "Working," he automatically responded, locking his phone screen. "The Singapore project can't wait." Sophia approached from behind and wrapped her arms around his neck, placing a kiss on his hair. "Always working," she murmured against his skin. "That's why I love you. For that dedication." We'll be the most powerful couple in Madrid when we marry, you know. My father is already talking to the minister about that concession you wanted so badly. Miguel Angel nodded distractedly. There was a time when the mention of that concession, vital for his new renewable energy division, would have captured his full attention. Now, however, his thoughts were completely absorbed by an old music box and the possibility of meeting the daughter he never knew he had. Sophia, with the insight that characterized her, noticed his disinterest. "What's wrong, Miguel Angel? You've been distant since you saw that woman, Elena." There was no accusation in her voice, but a calculated indifference that Miguel Angel knew well. Sofia Mendoza, daughter of one of the country's most influential builders, had been educated in the art of social diplomacy. She never raised her voice, never showed her true emotions in public. Her relationship with Miguel Angel had begun as a strategic alliance between two powerful families, and over time had transformed into something that, while not overflowing passion, did offer companionship and mutual understanding. Or so he had believed until Elena reappeared in his life. "It's complicated, Sophia," he finally replied. "There are aspects of my past that are resurfacing, and I need to resolve them." Sophia sat in front of him, her face a mask of understanding. "I completely understand. The past has an uncomfortable way of appearing at the most inopportune moments." She made a significant pause. "Especially when you're about to close the biggest deal of your career and announce your candidacy for the presidency of the Business Association." Miguel Angel looked at her directly, catching the implicit message. Sophia wasn't concerned about his feelings for Elena. She was concerned about how this situation could affect their joint plans, the impeccable public image they had built. "There's nothing to worry about," he assured, forcing a smile. "I just need to close some pending chapters." Sophia nodded, apparently satisfied with the response. "Good. Then I'll let you work." She rose with elegance. "Remember, we have the charity gala tonight. Your suit is ready. I sent it to the dry cleaners yesterday." When Sophia left, Miguel Angel exhaled slowly. The disparity between his current life and the one he had dreamed of with Elena had never been so evident. With Sophia, everything was planned, calculated to maximize social and economic benefits. With Elena, even in their poorest days as students, he had felt a freedom and authenticity that he now desperately yearned for. His phone vibrated with a new message. It was Elena. "I've spoken with Lucia. She wants to meet you. Tomorrow, 11:05, Retiro Park, by the pond." Miguel Angel felt his heart skip a beat. He was going to meet his daughter. The girl, no, the teenager, who carried his blood, his genes, part of his being. It was both terrifying and wonderful at the same time. He replied with trembling hands, "I'll be there. Thank you, Elena. Thank you for giving me this opportunity." As he contemplated the screen, a certainty settled in his mind. Regardless of what happened from now on, his life had just changed forever. The values he had pursued for 15 years, success, recognition, power, suddenly seemed hollow compared to the possibility of meeting his daughter, of recovering a part of himself that he never knew he had lost, and perhaps, just perhaps, of also recovering the only woman he had truly loved. Retiro Park shone under the autumn sun. Golden and reddish leaves formed a natural carpet over the paths, and the pond reflected the intense blue of the Madrid sky. Miguel Angel, dressed in jeans and a simple sweater, so different from his usual designer suits, waited by the shore trying to control the nerves that threatened to paralyze him. He had arrived half an hour before the agreed time, unable to stay at home waiting. Never, not even before the most crucial negotiations of his career, had he felt so anxious, so vulnerable. He saw them approaching from a distance. Eleanor walked slowly, as if giving him time to adapt to the idea. Beside her, a dark-haired teenager with an erect posture conversed animatedly, moving her hands with gestures that he immediately recognized as his own. Lucia, his daughter. The simple thought gave him a lump in his throat. When they reached him, Miguel Angel had to make a conscious effort not to gape. It was like looking at a feminine and youthful version of himself, but with Elena's expressive eyes and her warm smile. "Lucia," Elena said softly, "this is Miguel Angel Soto, your father." The word father resonated in the air like a revelation, a bridge built over 15 years of absence. Miguel Angel extended a hand, unsure how to proceed. But Lucia ignored the formal gesture, and, to the surprise of both adults, impulsively hugged him. "I've waited my whole life to meet you," she murmured against his chest. Something broke inside Miguel Angel. He wrapped his arms around his daughter, feeling an immediate, visceral connection, as if one part of his soul recognized the other. Over Lucia's shoulder, his eyes found Elena's, wet with contained emotion. "Me too," he managed to respond when they finally separated. "Even though I didn't know you existed." Lucia nodded, understanding. "Mom explained everything to me, about Grandpa, the letters, the misunderstandings." She paused, evaluating him with a surprisingly mature look for her 14 years. "It's like one of those soap operas Grandma Carmen watches, but real." Miguel Angel couldn't help but smile at the comparison. "Quite accurate," he conceded. "Though I hope the ending is better than those soap operas." The three began to walk slowly beside the pond, the initial discomfort gradually dissolving amid questions and answers. Lucia wanted to know everything: how her parents had met, what Miguel Angel was like when he was young, how he had built his company if he had other children, he didn't, if he liked the same ice cream as her, chocolate with almonds, a coincidence that made them laugh. "Mom says I have your stubbornness," Lucia commented as they sat on a bench facing the water, "and your way of furrowing your brow when I don't like something." "And his intelligence," Elena added, who until then had remained relatively silent. "Lucia is the best in her class in mathematics and science, exactly like you at university." The pride Miguel Angel felt was so intense, it momentarily left him speechless. He had achieved notable successes in his professional life, but nothing compared to discovering that this brilliant young woman carried his blood, that somehow his legacy would continue through her. "I'm developing a project on renewable energy for the science fair," Lucia commented, "about how to implement solar panels in communities with limited resources." Miguel Angel looked at her with genuine interest. "We're actually working on something similar at Nexus Technologies," he responded enthusiastically. "We have an entire department dedicated to sustainable solutions for disadvantaged areas." Lucia's eyes lit up. "Really? Could I visit sometime?" "It would be perfect for my project." "Of course," Miguel Angel replied without thinking twice. "Whenever you want. I can show you everything, introduce you to the team." He stopped upon noticing Elena's expression, a mixture of concern and caution. "If your mother thinks it's okay, of course," he quickly added. Elena softened her expression. "We can talk about it," she conceded. "But right now Lucia has important exams and can't be too distracted." The conversation naturally flowed to Lucia's education, her dreams for the future. She wanted to study environmental engineering. Her hobbies: she played the piano, another coincidence with Miguel Angel that deeply moved him. 2 hours passed like minutes. When Elena finally mentioned they had to leave for lunch with Carmen, Miguel Angel felt a pang of disappointment. "Can we see each other again?" he asked, addressing both but looking especially at Lucia. "Of course," the young girl immediately responded, looking to her mother for confirmation. Eleanor nodded with a cautious smile. "We can arrange it for next weekend," she suggested. "If you don't have commitments, of course." The mention of commitments brought to Miguel Angel's mind the image of Sophia and the complicated situation he found himself in. He would have to talk to her, explain, but how to explain something he didn't fully understand himself? The emotions he felt rediscovering Elena, meeting Lucia, were too intense, too fundamental to reduce to words. "The weekend is perfect," he confirmed, temporarily putting aside those concerns. "Perhaps we could go to the Museum of Natural Sciences, if that interests you, Lucia." "I'd love that." The young girl's smile was radiant. They said goodbye with a hug less awkward than the first, and Miguel Angel watched mother and daughter walk away down the path, conversing animatedly. The image gave him a mixture of happiness and pain. This was what he had missed for 15 years. Lucia's first words, her first steps, her birthdays, her school achievements, an entire universe of irretrievable moments. But there was no use lamenting the past. What mattered was the future, and he was determined to be part of his daughter's life from now on, in whatever way Elena and Lucia would allow him. As he walked toward the park exit, his phone vibrated. It was a message from Javier. "Urgent. Sophia has been investigating Elena. She just hired a private investigator. I think she knows about Lucia. Miguel Angel's stomach contracted with anxiety. What was Sofia up to? Was she planning to use that information to keep Elena and Lucia away from his life? He dialed his fiancée's number, determined to confront her directly. To his surprise, the voice that answered sounded perfectly serene. Miguel Angel, how timely. I was about to call you. I need you to come home as soon as possible. We have a visitor. A visitor? Caution was reflected in his voice. Who? Oh, just the international investor who could save that social project you're so interested in, Sofia replied with a deliberately casual tone. Victor Sandoval has come expressly from Singapore to meet you. He's very interested in your renewable energy initiative for disadvantaged areas. Miguel Angel stopped in his tracks. Victor Sandoval was an investment magnate, known for his support of social impact projects, but also for his ruthless competition with Nexus Technologies in the Asian market. That he was in Madrid, in his home, specifically interested in his most recent social project, couldn't be a coincidence. I'll be there in half an hour, he replied, trying to remain calm. Don't begin any negotiations without me. Of course not, darling. Sofia's voice had a hint of amusement. We're just having coffee while discussing some interesting coincidences. For example, the fact that Victor also knows your friend Elena. Apparently, he's considering financing the international expansion of her small cleaning company. The revelation fell on Miguel Angel like a bucket of cold water. Now it all made sense. Victor Sandoval wasn't interested in his projects. He was building a strategy to weaken him through Elena. And Sofia, far from being an innocent victim in this situation, seemed to be playing her own game. For the first time in years, Miguel Angel felt he was losing control of the situation. His personal and professional life, which he had always kept carefully separate, now intertwined in dangerous and unpredictable ways. As he quickened his pace toward his car, a message from Elena arrived on his phone. Lucia won't stop talking about you. Thank you for being so natural with her. It means a lot. The simplicity and honesty of the message dramatically contrasted with the power games and manipulations that awaited him at home. In that instant, Miguel Angel understood with crystal clarity which values truly mattered in his life. With renewed determination, he replied, "She is an extraordinary young woman. I'm proud to be her father. And I'm proud of you, Elena, for the person you've raised her to be." He put away his phone and started the car, mentally preparing for the battle that awaited him. A battle that, he now knew, was not just for the future of his company, but for something much more valuable. The possibility of recovering the authenticity he had lost in his rise to power and the family he never knew he had. Miguel Angel's mansion in La Moraleja, one of Madrid's most exclusive neighborhoods, gleamed under the afternoon sun when Elena parked her modest car by the entrance. She had never been there. Sofia's invitation had taken her completely by surprise. "A tea between women," she had said on the phone with a cordiality that contradicted the underlying tension in her voice. "There are matters we should discuss, woman to woman." Elena had hesitated to accept, but curiosity and a strange sense that she should face this situation head-on had driven her to attend. Lucia was safe at Carmen's house, unaware of this new development. A domestic employee received her at the door and led her through an impressive hall decorated with contemporary art and carefully selected antiques. The house was exactly as Elena would have imagined it. Elegant, impeccable, and strangely impersonal, like a perfectly staged setting to represent success. Sofia was waiting on a terrace overlooking the garden, seated by a table set with fine porcelain tea service. Her smile didn't reach her eyes as she gestured for Elena to take a seat across from her. "Thank you for coming, Elena. I hope you found the house without difficulty." Elena nodded, remaining alert. There was something in Sofia's apparent kindness that put her on guard. "Your invitation was unexpected," she replied cautiously. Sofia poured tea into 2 delicate cups, with precise and elegant movements that evidenced her privileged education. "I firmly believe that intelligent women can resolve complicated situations without the need for unpleasant confrontations." She handed a cup to Elena. "And our situation is without a doubt complicated." Elena held Sofia's gaze without being intimidated. "What situation exactly?" Sofia let out a soft, almost musical laugh. "Please, let's not play naive. You know perfectly well what I'm referring to." She made a calculated pause. Miguel Angel, your daughter, my fiancé's sudden interest in a family he never mentioned having... The mention of Lucia made Elena visibly tense. My daughter is not part of any situation, she responded firmly. She's a teenager who just met her father after 15 years, that's all. Oh, but it's much more than that, don't you think? Sophia took a sip of tea, observing Eleanor over the rim of the cup. She's the heiress to the Soto fortune, after all, an heiress no one knew anything about until a few weeks ago. Eleanor felt a wave of indignation. If you think this has anything to do with money or inheritances, you're completely mistaken. I've never wanted a penny from Miguel Angel, and I'm not going to start now. Sophia studied her with an evaluating expression. I believe you, she finally said, surprising Eleanor. I've investigated thoroughly, you know. Your small company, your work with vulnerable women, your modest lifestyle. You're not a fortune hunter, which makes you even more dangerous. Dangerous? Elena set the cup on the table, bewildered. You represent something that money can't buy, Sophia explained, with a flash of vulnerability in her usually calculating eyes. Authenticity, a shared past, genuine feelings, the kind of things that can make a man like Miguel Angel question all the decisions he's made in the last 15 years. Sophia's unexpected honesty momentarily left Elena at a loss for words. She had expected veiled threats, perhaps even a bribery attempt, but not this raw exposition of insecurities. I haven't come to win Miguel Angel back, she finally clarified. I just want Lucia to be able to know her father. And him. Sophia's question was direct. What does Miguel Angel want? It was a question Elena had been asking herself since the reunion. What was Miguel Angel really looking for? To meet his daughter? To revive the past? Or something more complex, related to the midlife crisis of a man who had achieved all his professional goals, but who perhaps had lost something fundamental along the way? You would have to ask him, she finally responded. Sophia rose with a fluid movement and walked to the edge of the terrace, contemplating the immaculate garden. I have, many times in recent weeks. She turned to look at Elena. Do you know what he tells me? That everything is under control, that he's just closing pending chapters. The same automatic responses he gives in interviews when he doesn't want to reveal his true intentions. The vulnerability in Sophia's voice touched an unexpected chord in Elena. Despite the circumstances, despite the obvious differences between them, she recognized in Sophia a woman facing the fear of losing the man she loved, or at least the man she had chosen as a life partner. I don't intend to undo your engagement, Eleanor assured sincerely. Miguel Angel and I went our separate ways a long time ago. The only thing that unites us now is Lucia. Sophia observed her intensely, as if evaluating the truth in her words. I'll tell you something that might surprise you, Elena. I'm not so much concerned about losing Miguel Angel as a person, but what we represent together. She made a gesture encompassing the luxurious house. We've built something powerful, an alliance that benefits our families, our businesses, our shared ambitions. Elena was beginning to understand. For Sophia, marriage to Miguel Angel wasn't so much a romantic union as a strategic merger, a calculated move on the board of economic and social power. Love doesn't seem to be a priority in that equation, she commented softly. Sophia smiled with barely perceptible sadness. Love is a luxury that people like us can't always afford. She returned to her seat. But you understand that, don't you? You've also made sacrifices for what you consider important. Your company, the women you help, your daughter. The difference is that my sacrifices weren't for power or status, Elena replied. They were for the people I love, for values I believe in. And you think I don't love Miguel Angel in my own way? Sophia's question seemed genuine. I admire him. I respect his intelligence, his determination, his vision. We share goals. We understand the world in the same way. That's also a form of love, Elena. Elena reflected on these words. Perhaps Sophia was right. Perhaps there were different forms of love, different ways of building a shared life. Who was she to judge? What is it that you really want from me, Sophia? She finally asked, getting to the point. Sophia seemed to appreciate the frankness. I want you to understand what's at stake. Miguel Angel is about to close the biggest deal of his career. The merger with Yamatsu Tech would make him one of the most influential businessmen in Europe. She made a significant pause. But there are complications. Victor Sandoval, a direct competitor, is trying to sabotage the deal. And coincidentally, he's interested in investing in your small company. Elena frowned, remembering the meeting Carmen had arranged with an international investor for the following week. "Are you suggesting I'm part of some kind of corporate conspiracy?" she asked, incredulous. "Not intentionally," Sofia clarified, "but you're being used. Sandoval sees in you a way to get close to Miguel Angel, to obtain privileged information, to emotionally destabilize him at a critical moment." The revelation left Elena perplexed. Was it possible that this investor's sudden interest in Esperanza services was not a coincidence, but a calculated strategy? "Why are you telling me this?" she asked, genuinely confused. "Because, surprisingly, I believe you're a good person, Elena." Sofia looked directly into her eyes. "And because I want to propose an agreement that could benefit us both." Elena waited, cautious. "Nexus Technologies can invest in Esperanza services," Sofia continued. "A real substantial investment that would allow you to expand nationally, hire more women, develop those training programs Carmen mentioned to our analysts." "In exchange for what?" Elena asked, though she already intuited the answer. "In exchange for you being discreet regarding Miguel Angel's paternity." Sofia carefully chose her words. "Of course he can maintain a relationship with Lucia, occasional visits, financial support if needed, but no legal formalization, no public acknowledgement, at least until after the merger and our wedding." Elena felt a mixture of indignation and sadness. Indignation at the proposal that reduced the relationship between a father and daughter to a commercial transaction. Sadness for the life Miguel Angel had built, so full of material success and so empty of genuine connections. "I can't accept that," she responded firmly. "I'm not going to negotiate Lucia's rights in exchange for money, regardless of where it comes from." Sofia didn't seem surprised by the refusal. "I imagined so, but I had to try." Her expression hardened slightly. "In that case, I can only warn you to be careful. You're entering a world you don't know, Elena, a world where people are pieces on a much larger board." The warning, though veiled, was clear. Elena stood up, ending the conversation. "Thank you for the tea," she said with dignity. "And for your honesty, at least." As she headed toward the exit, Sofia's voice stopped her. "One last thing, Elena. Do you still love him?" The question, so direct and personal, caught her off guard. Elena turned slowly, considering her response. "What I feel or don't feel for Miguel Angel is irrelevant," she finally replied. 15 years ago, we took different paths. He has built his life, I have built mine. You haven't answered my question," Sofia insisted with a sad smile. Elena held her gaze for a long moment. "No, I suppose I haven't," she admitted, before turning and walking away. As she drove back to her apartment, the unspoken words weighed on her mind. She hadn't answered Sofia's question because the answer terrified her, because despite the years, the lies, the divergent paths, a part of her had never stopped loving Miguel Angel. And that truth, more than any economic offer or veiled threat, was what could truly destabilize the fragile balance she had built over 15 years. The phone rang when she was arriving home. It was Miguel Angel. "Sofia told me about her invitation," he said without preamble. "Are you okay?" The concern in his voice was genuine, and that moved Elena more than she was willing to admit. "I'm fine," she replied, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "It was educational. I'm sorry." The regret in Miguel Angel's voice was palpable. "I didn't know she was planning to contact you. Things are complicated right now." Elena sighed, too emotionally exhausted to maintain barriers. "All of this is complicated, Miguel Angel. For all of us." A silence charged with meaning extended between them. "We need to talk," he finally said. "About Lucia, about that investor who has contacted your company, about—" "Sis?" The last word hung in the air, charged with unexplored possibilities. "I know," Elena admitted, "but not now. I need time to think." "Of course." Miguel Angel seemed to understand perfectly. "I just want you to know that whatever happens with the business or with Sofia or with anything else, Lucia is my priority now. I want to be part of her life, Elena, in whatever way you consider appropriate, but I want to be present." The sincerity in his declaration brought tears to Elena's eyes. She wants to know you too, she responded softly. She hasn't stopped talking about you since Sunday. I think you have a lot of time to make up for. Thank you, Miguel Angel's voice broke slightly, for giving me this opportunity, for being so generous after everything. Elena closed her eyes, allowing herself for a moment to remember the young Miguel Angel, so different from the powerful businessman he had become, but with the same capacity to move her with his vulnerability. I'm not doing it for you, she clarified. I'm doing it for Lucia. She has always wanted to know her father. I understand, he replied. But thank you anyway. When the call ended, Eleanor remained in the car for several minutes reflecting on everything that had happened in recent weeks. The unexpected reunion, the revealed truths, the resurfaced feelings, the veiled threats. How had they come to this point? How had they become these people so different from the idealistic young adults they once were? And more importantly, was there any way to find a path forward that respected the past but wasn't limited by it? As these questions circled in her mind, a certainty began to emerge. For Lucia's sake, for her own sake, and perhaps even for Miguel Angel's sake, she would have to find the strength to face not only Sophia and her machinations, but also the feelings she had kept buried for 15 years. Because some stories, as she had discovered, never really end. They just pause before the next chapter. 1 month after the initial reunion, the lives of Miguel Angel and Elena had acquired a new routine. Every Sunday, Miguel Angel spent the afternoon with Lucia, visiting museums, walking through Retiro Park, or simply conversing for hours in a quiet cafe. Elena never accompanied them, preferring to maintain a certain distance, allowing father and daughter to build their own relationship without her intervention. That Sunday in November, however, the weather conspired against their plans. An unusually strong storm lashed Madrid, turning streets into rivers and making any outdoor activity impossible. We could reschedule, Elena suggested over the phone, looking worriedly out the window at the violent gusts of wind. It's not safe to drive in this weather. No way, Miguel Angel replied with determination. I cancelled a trip to Berlin to be with Lucia today. If we can't go out, what about if I come to your apartment? We could cook something together, watch a movie. The suggestion took Elena by surprise. Until now, they had kept their meetings on neutral ground, carefully avoiding the intimate spaces that could awaken memories too intense. I don't know if that's a good idea, she hesitated. Please, Elena, Miguel Angel insisted. Lucia has told me so much about her room, her books, that electric piano where she practices. I'd like to know the world where she grew up. The sincerity in his voice melted Elena's reservations. After all, it was natural for a father to want to see his daughter's everyday environment. All right, she finally conceded. But I warn you, it's nothing like your mansion in La Moraleja. It's a modest apartment. Miguel Angel laughed softly on the other end of the line. You think that matters to me? I remind you that I grew up in a 750-square-foot apartment with my parents and 2 siblings. The luxury came later, and not by my choice precisely. Elena smiled, remembering the university student Miguel Angel, who felt more comfortable in a student cafeteria than in the exclusive restaurants where his father occasionally insisted on taking them. At 5, then, she confirmed. I'll bring ingredients to make homemade pizza. Lucia will love it. Homemade pizza, Miguel Angel repeated with nostalgia, like the one we used to make in your student apartment when we couldn't afford to go out for dinner. The shared memory created a moment of unexpected intimacy that neither knew how to handle. See you later, Miguel Angel. Elena quickly said goodbye, ending the call before the conversation drifted into more dangerous territories. At 5 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. Miguel Angel was at the door, soaked despite the umbrella, with a grocery bag in one hand and a violin case in the other. A violin? Elena asked, surprised, as she invited him in. Miguel Angel shook the water from his coat in the hallway. Lucia mentioned she'd like to learn in addition to the piano. I thought we could play something together. He suddenly seemed unsure. Is it too much? Elena shook her head, touched by the gesture. It's perfect. She's in her room, studying. She'll be glad to see you. Miguel Angel followed Elena into the apartment, observing with interest the space that indeed had nothing to do with his luxurious residence. It was small but bright, decorated with simplicity and good taste. Photographs of Elena and Lucia throughout the years covered an entire wall, telling the visual story of their growth together. He stopped in front of an image of Lucia at about 6 years old, smiling with one tooth missing next to a birthday cake. "I've missed so much," he murmured, more to himself than to Eleanor. She approached and contemplated the photograph beside him. It was her 6th birthday. She had been saving for weeks to buy me that necklace I'm wearing. She chose it herself. The tenderness in Elena's voice as she shared that memory touched something deep in Miguel Angel. For a moment, he allowed himself to imagine an alternative life where he had been present at that birthday, where he had helped Lucia choose that gift for her mother, where the three of them had formed the family they could have been. The sound of a door opening interrupted his thoughts. "Dad!" Lucia's enthusiastic exclamation still startled him. It was so new, so extraordinary to hear that word directed at him. "I didn't expect to see you here. Mom said with the storm we might cancel." Lucia approached to hug him, a gesture that had become natural between them with surprising speed, as if their bodies remembered a connection that their conscious minds had never experienced. "The weather wasn't going to keep me from seeing you," Miguel Angel responded, returning her hug. "Plus, I bring a surprise." He showed her the violin case, and Lucia's eyes lit up. "Is it for me?" "Really?" "If you want to learn, of course," Miguel Angel confirmed. "I thought we could start today with some basic concepts." "Of course I want to." Lucia took the case with reverence. "Mum, did you hear? Dad is going to teach me to play the violin." Elena nodded, observing the scene with a mixture of contradictory emotions. Seeing the happiness on her daughter's face was all she had ever wanted, but it also raised painful questions about what could have been if circumstances had been different, if they hadn't been separated by lies and manipulations. "Why don't you show your room to your father while I prepare a snack?" she suggested, needing a moment alone to compose herself. As Lucia enthusiastically dragged Miguel Angel toward her room, Elena headed to the kitchen and began preparing hot chocolate, her daughter's favorite drink on cold days. Through the half-open door, she could hear fragments of the animated conversation. Lucia explaining her posters of famous female scientists, Miguel Angel commenting on the books on her shelf, both laughing at some shared insight. It was such a domestic scene, so everyday, and yet so extraordinary given the circumstances. How had they reached this point, where the powerful Miguel Angel Soto was sitting in a teenager's room full of posters, listening with genuine interest to her explanations about mathematical equations? The sound of the violin pulled her from her reflections, hesitant notes at first, then firmer as Miguel Angel guided Lucia's hands. Eleanor approached the door silently and observed. Father and daughter sitting on the bed, bent over the instrument, with identical expressions of concentration on their faces. It was like looking through a window into an alternative reality, a glimpse of the family life they could have had if circumstances had been different. The phone's ring interrupted the moment. It was Carmen, sounding unusually agitated. "Elena, we have a problem. The airport has closed due to the storm. Victor Sandoval will be stranded in Madrid until at least tomorrow, and he wants to move up our meeting. He insists on seeing you today." Elena felt a pang of unease. After the conversation with Sofia, she had investigated Victor Sandoval and his rivalry with Nexus Technologies more thoroughly. The coincidence of his sudden interest in Esperanza services was too convenient to be casual. "I can't meet today, Carmen," she replied. "I'm at home with Lucia and—" She paused, unsure whether to mention Miguel Angel's presence. "And Miguel Angel," Carmen completed, surprising her. "I know. Sofia Mendoza called me this morning." Elena frowned, alarmed. "Sofia called you? What for?" "To warn me that Sandoval isn't really interested in our company, but in using us to get to Miguel Angel." Carmen made a significant pause. "She also offered me a considerable investment from Nexus Technologies as an alternative." "My God," Elena murmured, processing the implications. "She's using all her cards." "What do we do, Elena?" Carmen's concern was palpable. "Sandoval is offering exactly what we need for international expansion, but if his motives are as murky as Sofia suggests—" Elena closed her eyes, trying to think clearly despite the emotional storm engulfing her. "Tell him not today. Reschedule for tomorrow at our offices, not at any place he suggests." "All right," Carmen agreed. "But Elena, be careful. You're in the middle of something bigger than us." When she hung up, Elena realized that Miguel Angel was at the kitchen door, observing her with a worried expression. That was Carmen, wasn't it? His tone indicated he had heard enough to understand. Sandoval wants to meet with you. Elena nodded, suddenly feeling exhausted. He's using me to get to you, isn't he? Miguel Angel approached, his face a mask of concern and guilt. I'm sorry, Elena. I never wanted to drag you into my corporate battles. It's not your fault, she replied sincerely. I built my own company, made my own decisions, and now I must face the consequences. Miguel Angel looked at her with a mixture of admiration and remorse. You were always the strong one between us, he murmured. Even when you believed I had abandoned you, you moved forward, built something meaningful, raised our daughter, while I merely followed the path my father had laid out for me. The vulnerability in his voice moved Elena more than she wanted to admit. This was the Miguel Angel she remembered, the one who allowed himself to show his doubts and insecurities, not the ruthless businessman who appeared in economic magazines. We both did what we thought was right with the information we had, she responded softly. There's no use lamenting now. A sudden blackout plunged the apartment into darkness, interrupting their conversation. Outside, the storm intensified, beating furiously against the windows. Mom, Dad! Lucia called from her room, a touch of alarm in her voice. They both hurried to her, illuminating their way with their mobile phones. Lucia was by the window, observing the darkness that had engulfed the neighborhood. It seems the blackout affects the entire area, Miguel Angel commented, approaching the window. The storm must have knocked down some power lines. Elena began searching for candles and flashlights in the cabinets. The familiarity with which Miguel Angel joined the task, as if he had lived there for years, created a strange atmosphere of domesticity that no one commented on, but everyone perceived. Soon the apartment was illuminated by the warm, flickering light of several candles. Lucia proposed playing cards while they waited for the electricity to return, and the three sat around the dining table, laughing and competing in successive hands of poker, with corn kernels as chips. I think you've inherited my poker face, Miguel Angel commented to Lucia after she won her third consecutive hand. Your mother was always terrible at this game. You can see everything on her face. Hey! Elena protested, throwing a kernel of corn at him that he dodged with a laugh. Lucia observed the exchange with an enigmatic smile, her eyes shining in the candlelight. It's as if you've always been together, she commented with a naturalness that momentarily left both adults speechless. You act as if you've known each other your whole lives. A silence charged with meaning followed her observation. Elena and Miguel Angel exchanged a look that contained 15 years of absence, of unanswered questions, of unexplored possibilities. We were very close once, Elena finally replied, carefully choosing her words. Before you were born. Did you lie to my father about me? Lucia's direct question took them both by surprise. Lucia, Elena exclaimed, horrified. How can you ask something like that? It's a valid question, Mom, Lucia replied with surprising maturity. If you believed he had abandoned you, why didn't you tell him you were pregnant? He had the right to know. The silence that followed was tense, intermittently illuminated by the lightning that crossed the dark sky. Your mother did what she considered best under very difficult circumstances, Miguel Angel intervened, his voice soft but firm. She believed I had chosen my career over our relationship. In her place, I probably would have made the same decision. Elena looked at him with gratitude, moved by his defense. I tried to contact your father when I discovered I was pregnant, she explained to Lucia, but the letter I sent never reached him. And the one I received supposedly from him made it clear he didn't want to continue our relationship. She paused, gathering courage. I thought I would be a burden to him, an obstacle in his path to success. But you were wrong, Lucia pointed out. He never wrote that letter. It was all a misunderstanding created by my grandfather. Elena nodded, tears shining in her eyes in the candlelight. Yes, I was wrong, and because of that you lost 15 years with your father. I'm sorry, Lucia, I truly am. The teenager rose and rounded the table to hug her mother. It's not your fault, Mom. Nor yours, she added, looking at Miguel Angel. You were both victims of Grandpa's manipulations. Her daughter's wisdom and compassion left Elena speechless. How was it possible that this 14-year-old could see with such clarity what they, as adults, had been unable to understand for so long? What matters is that we're together now, Lucia continued. Maybe not as a traditional family, but together in some way. Miguel Angel extended a hand across the table, taking Elena's and Lucia's in a gesture that seemed to seal a tacit pact among the three. Together, he repeated with an intensity that made Elena feel a shiver run down her spine. The moment was interrupted by the insistent sound of Miguel Angel's phone. Sophia's name glowed on the screen. He hesitated a moment before rejecting the call. "Aren't you going to answer?" Elena asked, surprised. "Not now," Miguel Angel replied, putting the phone in his pocket. "There are conversations that can wait, and others that can't. This one, with you both, is of the kind that can't wait." The decision in his voice revealed much about the change taking place in him, about the priorities he was reconsidering. Helena wondered what this would mean for his engagement to Sophia, for his business plans, for the future he had so carefully constructed before their reunion. But those were questions for another time. Now, trapped by the storm in the small candlelit apartment, with her daughter building bridges between them, only this moment of unexpected connection mattered, this feeling of having found something they believed lost forever. Outside, the storm began to slowly abate, as if it had fulfilled its purpose, forcing them to stop to listen to each other, to truly see each other for the first time in 15 years. The electricity returned near midnight, but Miguel Angel still couldn't leave. The storm had caused flooding in several areas of Madrid, including the street where his car was parked. After a brief discussion, Elena offered him the sofa, a solution that Lucia welcomed with evident enthusiasm. "We can have breakfast together tomorrow," the teenager suggested, her eyes shining at the prospect of this unexpected family night. "Mom makes amazing pancakes on Sundays." Miguel Angel accepted the offer with a mixture of gratitude and nervousness. Spending the night under the same roof as Elena, even in such innocent circumstances, awakened emotions he had carefully controlled during the past weeks. Now, while Elena and Lucia slept in their respective rooms, he remained awake on the small living room sofa, too aware of every creak in the apartment, every gust of wind against the windows, the proximity of the two people who, without intending to, had completely altered the course of his life. His phone vibrated on the small table. It was Sophia's 15th attempt to contact him. Finally, he decided to respond to the message, more out of a sense of responsibility than real desire for communication. "I'm fine. Trapped by the storm. We'll talk tomorrow." The response came almost immediately. "Where are you exactly?" Miguel Angel hesitated. Telling Sophia he was spending the night in Elena's apartment would only further complicate an already tense situation. "At a friend's house near the center. The street is flooded." This time the response took longer to arrive. "Victor Sandoval has been calling me. He says he has information about your family situation that might interest me. Is there anything I should know, Miguel Angel?" A chill ran down his back. The barely veiled threat confirmed his suspicions. Sandoval was using Lucia as a piece in his corporate game. But how had he discovered her existence? And what exactly did he intend? "We'll talk tomorrow in person. Don't trust Sandoval." He put away the phone and rose silently, needing to move to calm his anxiety. The apartment was in semi-darkness, illuminated only by the moonlight filtering through the curtains. Miguel Angel approached the wall where he had seen the photographs of Elena and Lucia earlier. In the dim nocturnal light, he observed his daughter's growth through the years, her first steps, her first day of school, birthdays, beach vacations, school festivals. An entire universe of moments he had missed, and now tried to reconstruct through these images frozen in time. "I couldn't sleep." Elena's soft voice startled him. She was at the threshold of the living room, wrapped in a simple robe, with her hair loose falling over her shoulders. In the half-light she seemed younger, more like the student he had loved with the intensity of the first time. "Neither could I," Miguel Angel admitted. "Too many things on my mind." Elena approached and contemplated the photographs beside him. "I spent years documenting every important moment of her life," she commented nostalgically. "I suppose, subconsciously, I always knew that someday you would meet Lucia and would want to see everything you had missed." The honesty of her confession moved Miguel Angel. "Did you never think about looking for me directly?" he asked softly. "In recent years, when you were already independent and had your own company," Elena reflected before responding. "I considered it many times, especially when Lucia began asking more specific questions about you." She paused, searching for the exact words. But I had built my entire life on the belief that you had rejected us. Confronting you meant risking confirming that rejection, hearing you say you weren't interested in knowing your daughter. Miguel Angel felt acute pain at this confession. I would never have rejected Lucia, he affirmed vehemently. Not then, not now, not ever. I know, Eleanor replied with a sad smile. I know that now. But fear and pride are terrible advisors, Miguel Angel. They remained silent, observing the photographs, each immersed in their own thoughts about lost time, decisions made, paths not taken. I found this a few days ago, Elena finally said, pulling a folded and wrinkled paper from her robe pocket. I was going through old boxes and it appeared among my university notes. Miguel Angel took the paper curiously. Upon unfolding it, he immediately recognized his own youthful handwriting. It was a poem he had written for Elena in the first months of their relationship, when everything seemed possible and the future stretched before them like a blank canvas. For Eleanor, the beginning and end of all my prayers, he read aloud, feeling a wave of nostalgia so intense it almost took his breath away. I can't believe you kept it all these years. I kept many things, Elena admitted. Letters, movie tickets, that napkin where you drew the plans for the house we would build someday. Their eyes met in the half-light, and for a moment, time seemed to stop. 15 years of separation vanished as if they had never existed, and they were simply Miguel Angel and Elena again, two young people in love planning a future that fate had snatched from them. I have to ask you, Elena, Miguel Angel murmured, slightly shortening the distance between them. If we hadn't been separated, if we had known the truth, do you think we would have worked out that we would still be together after all this time? It was the question they had both been avoiding since their reunion, the one that underlay every conversation, every look, every cautious gesture. Eleanor reflected seriously before responding. I don't know, she finally said with honesty. We were very young, with big but vague dreams. Maybe we would have grown together, or maybe we would have grown in different directions. She paused, carefully choosing her next words. But I know we would have had the opportunity to discover it for ourselves, and that's what hurts me the most, that they robbed us of the possibility to choose our own destiny. Miguel Angel nodded, perfectly understanding what she meant. It wasn't just the relationship they had lost, but the agency over their own lives, the fundamental right to make their own decisions based on truthful information. Do you know what's most ironic? He continued with a bitter smile. My father manipulated everything so that I would follow the path he had laid out for me, so that I would become the perfect successor to the Soto Empire. And he succeeded. But not because I wanted it, but because when you disappeared, when I believed you had chosen another life, I immersed myself in work as the only way not to think, not to feel. The revelation surprised Elena. Are you saying you became who you are today, out of spite? Not exactly out of spite, Miguel Angel clarified, more out of emptiness, out of the need to fill the void you left. Business, success, recognition. All of it became a substitute for the love I thought I had lost. Eleanor processed this information, suddenly aware of how much they had both suffered due to Fernando Soto's machinations. Your father got what he wanted, but at a terrible price, she murmured. He turned you into what he desired, but he stole your happiness in the process. And he stole much more from you, Miguel Angel added, his voice broken with emotion. He forced you to raise our daughter alone, to fight against all odds to support her without the help I should have given you. Elena shook her head, rejecting his self-blame. I don't blame you, Miguel Angel. I never have. Not since I learned the truth. The blame lies only with those who manipulated our lives for their own ends. Miguel Angel took another step toward her, further reducing the distance between them. And now what, Elena? His voice was barely a whisper. What do we do with this truth that has arrived 15 years late? The question hung suspended between them, charged with possibilities and dangers. Elena was painfully aware of Miguel Angel's proximity, of the warmth emanating from his body, of the familiarity of his scent that awakened memories deeply buried in her memory. Now we think about Lucia, she finally replied, taking a small step back to break the tension of the moment. About how to build something healthy for her, how to allow her to have her father in her life without unnecessary complications. The mention of complications didn't go unnoticed by Miguel Angel. You're referring to Sophia? He asked directly. Among other things, Elena nodded. You're engaged, Miguel Angel, and even if you weren't, our lives have taken very different paths. You're a powerful businessman about to close the biggest deal of your career. I run a small service company that employs women in vulnerable situations. That doesn't matter, Miguel Angel intervened passionately. The social or economic differences between us never mattered to me. You know that well. They didn't matter to the 22-year-old Miguel Angel, Elena gently corrected. But 15 years have passed. We've both changed, become different people. Miguel Angel ran a hand through his hair, frustrated by Elena's relentless logic. Are you saying it's too late? That there's no possibility of recovering something of what we lost? The vulnerability in his voice moved Elena to her core. For a moment, she was tempted to give in to the feelings she had kept buried for so long, to allow herself to imagine a future where they would resume what had been interrupted 15 years ago. But reality imposed itself. The responsibilities, the commitments, the separate lives they had built, Sophia, the pending business merger, Sandoval's manipulations. I think you first need to resolve your own life, Miguel Angel, she finally replied. Decide what you really want, what kind of man you want to be from now on, not just for Lucia or for me, but for yourself. Miguel Angel nodded slowly, recognizing the wisdom in her words. For 15 years he had lived according to others' expectations, pursuing goals he hadn't truly chosen. It was time to take control of his own existence, to make conscious choices based on his true values and desires. You're right, he admitted, and that's exactly what I intend to do. The determination in his voice alerted Elena. What are you planning, Miguel Angel? An enigmatic smile formed on his lips. A radical restructuring. Personal and professional. Before Elena could inquire further, a sound from the hallway alerted them. Lucia was there, observing them with an indecipherable expression. How long have you been there? Elena asked, feeling herself blush like a teenager caught in a compromising situation. Long enough, Lucia replied with a knowing smile. I came for a glass of water and found you two here, whispering like protagonists in a romantic movie. Miguel Angel couldn't help but laugh at the description. It's not exactly a romantic movie, honey, Elena corrected, trying to recover her maternal role. We were just talking about things from the past. And the future, Miguel Angel added significantly. Lucia looked at them alternately, with a perspicacity unusual for her 14 years. You know it would be great if you got back together, right? Like a real family. Her daughter's frankness momentarily left Elena speechless. It was the first time Lucia had openly expressed this desire, though it had been implicit in many of their recent conversations. Adult relationships are complicated, Lucia, she finally responded. Your father has commitments, an established life. A life I'm seriously reconsidering, Miguel Angel interrupted, looking directly at Elena. Especially after discovering what truly matters. The weight of his words created a silence charged with meaning. Lucia smiled, as if she had achieved exactly the reaction she expected. I'm going to bed, she announced, kissing them both on the cheek. But think about what I said. It's never too late to fix what was broken, right? With that surprisingly mature reflection, the teenager withdrew, leaving Elena and Miguel Angel alone again, caught in the whirlwind of emotions her daughter had deliberately stirred up. We should sleep too, Elena suggested, suddenly aware of how intimate the situation had become. Tomorrow will be a complicated day, with Sandoval waiting to meet me and Sophia waiting for explanations from you. Miguel Angel nodded, though his eyes revealed there was much more he wanted to say, promises he wanted to make, truths he needed to confess. Good night, Elena. He finally said goodbye, and thank you for everything. As she returned to her room, Elena felt that something fundamental had changed between them. The unspoken words, the exchanged glances, the almost palpable tension surrounding them, everything pointed toward an imminent turning point. What she couldn't imagine was the magnitude of the changes the new day would bring, nor how the decisions made during the next hours would irrevocably alter the course of their intertwined lives. The next morning dawned clear, as if the previous night's storm had never existed. Elena woke at dawn, unable to continue sleeping with so many thoughts swirling in her mind. She silently slipped to the kitchen, hoping to prepare coffee before Miguel Angel and Lucia woke up. To her surprise, Miguel Angel was already there, fully dressed, and apparently in the middle of a tense phone call. It's not negotiable, Javier, she heard him say, in a tone that admitted no reply. "I want the documents ready for this afternoon. Yes, I am perfectly aware of the implications. No, I don't need more time to think about it." Upon noticing Elena's presence, Miguel Angel quickly ended the call. "Good morning," he greeted, trying to smile despite the evident tension emanating from him. "I hope I didn't wake you." "No, I was already awake," Elena replied, studying his face for clues about the mysterious conversation. "Everything okay?" Miguel Angel put his phone on the counter and exhaled slowly. "I'm making some important decisions," he explained vaguely. "Putting my life in order, as you suggested last night." Before Elena could inquire further, the phone rang again. This time it was Sofia. Miguel Angel hesitated a moment before answering, moving toward the living room to keep the conversation private. Elena busied herself preparing coffee, trying not to speculate about the content of the call, though it was evident from Miguel Angel's tone that it was an intense discussion. When he returned to the kitchen, his expression was a mixture of determination and relief. "Problems?" Elena asked, offering him a cup of coffee. "Clarifications," he corrected, accepting the cup gratefully. It was necessary. The sound of footsteps announced Lucia's arrival, still in pajamas and with hair tousled from sleep. "Good morning," she greeted enthusiastically, apparently delighted to find both parents sharing a morning coffee in the kitchen. "Who wants pancakes?" The normalcy with which Lucia approached this extraordinary situation, having breakfast with her father for the first time after 14 years of absence, moved Elena. For her daughter, this wasn't a traumatic or complicated event, but simply a correction of the universe, a return to how things should always have been. While Lucia took over the kitchen, preparing pancake batter with the confidence of someone who perfectly knows their territory, Miguel Angel observed every movement with fascination, as if trying to absorb and memorize every detail of his daughter's personality. "It's incredible how much she resembles you," he commented quietly to Elena. "It's not just physically, but in her gestures, in her way of concentrating when she's doing something." "She has your determination," Elena replied with a smile, "and your talent for mathematics. She never needs to measure the ingredients. Somehow she knows exactly how much flour to add, how much milk. And your generosity," Miguel Angel added, "the way she talks about her volunteer work at the soup kitchen, how she cares about others. That's all yours." The complicity of that moment, sharing observations about their daughter as they would have done had they raised Lucia together, created an intimacy that neither dared to comment on. Breakfast passed amid laughter and light conversation, as if they were a normal family sharing a Sunday morning. Miguel Angel told anecdotes from his university days that made Lucia laugh and Elena blush. Lucia talked about her plans for the school science project. Elena commented on the latest developments at Esperanza Services, carefully avoiding any mention of Victor Sandoval or the pending meeting. When they finished eating, Lucia announced she had to study for a physics exam and retired to her room, not before hugging Miguel Angel with a naturalness that brought moisture to Elena's eyes. "She makes it seem so easy," Elena commented when they were alone, "accepting you into her life as if you had always been there." Miguel Angel nodded, visibly moved. "Children have an amazing capacity to adapt, to forgive." He made a significant pause. "Perhaps we could learn from her." Elena began collecting the plates, needing to keep busy while processing the subtext of his words. "What exactly do you mean?" Miguel Angel stood up and approached her, gently taking the plates from her hands and setting them in the sink. "Elena, I need you to listen to me," he said, with a seriousness that alarmed her. "I've made some decisions this morning, decisions that will change many things." Something in his tone made Elena prepare herself to receive potentially disturbing news. "What have you done?" she asked cautiously. Miguel Angel took a deep breath before responding. "I've cancelled my engagement to Sofia." The revelation momentarily left Elena speechless. Of all the possibilities she had imagined, this was perhaps the most shocking and the most charged with implications. "Why would you do something like that?" she finally managed to ask. "Is it because of Lucia?" "Partly," Miguel Angel admitted. "But not just for her. It's for me, for the person I've become and the person I want to be from now on." He paused, as if ordering his thoughts. "Last night, while we were talking, something became clear in my mind. I've spent 15 years living the life my father designed for me, pursuing goals I never really chose. My engagement to Sophia was part of that pattern, a strategic alliance, convenient for both families, but without the kind of connection that truly matters. Elena listened with a mixture of amazement and concern. Miguel Angel, you can't make such drastic decisions based on one night of nostalgic conversation. There's too much at stake. Your company, the merger, your reputation. Precisely, he interrupted passionately. There is too much at stake. My happiness, my authenticity, the possibility of being the father Lucia deserves, the man I always wanted to be. The intensity in his words made Elena step back slightly. You're not thinking clearly, she tried to reason. The reunion, the revelations about your father, meeting Lucia, everything has happened very quickly. It's natural that you feel overwhelmed and want to make changes, but I've never thought more clearly in my entire life, Miguel Angel assured, approaching her again. And there's something else you should know. I've also decided to withdraw from the negotiation with Yamatsu Tech. This second revelation was, if possible, even more surprising than the first. What? But that merger is the project of your life. You've worked for years to achieve it. I've worked for years to achieve what I thought I should want, Miguel Angel corrected. But in the last few weeks, I've realized there are things more important than corporate mergers or strategic alliances. Elena stared at him, trying to comprehend the magnitude of the decisions he was making. And what about Sandoval? You told me he was trying to sabotage the merger. Sandoval no longer matters, Miguel Angel replied with surprising tranquility. If there's no merger to sabotage, his machinations lose meaning. But he's still interested in investing in my company, Elena pointed out. Why, if he can no longer use me to get to you? Miguel Angel frowned, considering this question. You're right. That's strange. He reflected for a moment. Perhaps we should find out together. What time is your meeting with him? At 2 at Esperanza Services offices, Elena replied, still processing Miguel Angel's revelations. But I don't think it's a good idea for you to come with me. It would complicate things. On the contrary, Miguel Angel argued. I think my presence could reveal his true intentions. If he's really interested in your company on its own merits, my presence shouldn't matter. If he has other motives, we'll know immediately. The approach was logical, but Elena still had doubts. What about Sophia? She asked, addressing the elephant in the room. How did she react to your decision to break the engagement? Miguel Angel's expression became more serious. As I expected, first disbelief, then anger, finally negotiation. She threatened that her father would withdraw support for several of my projects, which is understandable. But I've reached a point in my life where I'm willing to accept the consequences of my decisions, whatever they may be. There was something moving in his determination, in the clarity with which he expressed his new vision of life. Elena couldn't help but feel admiration for this man, who, after years of following a path traced by others, finally took the reins of his destiny. And now what? She asked, genuinely curious about his plans. Miguel Angel smiled, a smile that reminded her of the idealistic young man she had met at university. Now I build something new, a life based on my own values, not my father's. A company that reflects what truly matters to me, not what impresses shareholders. He made a significant pause. And if you allow me, a relationship with my daughter that goes beyond occasional Sunday visits. The mention of Lucia made Elena focus again on what truly mattered. I will always be welcome in her life, Miguel Angel, in whatever way works best for her. Thank you, he responded sincerely. But there's something else I need to ask you, Elena. The intensity in his gaze put her on alert. What? Is there any possibility for us? The question was direct without beating around the bush. Not now, not tomorrow, but eventually. Do you think we could rebuild something of what we lost? It was the question Elena had been both fearing and expecting since the reunion. The question she had asked herself during long sleepless nights, remembering what they had been, imagining what they could have been, wondering what they could be. It's too early to answer that, she finally said. We both need time. You've just made decisions that will completely alter the course of your life. You need to live them, experience their consequences, make sure they're really what you want. Miguel Angel nodded, accepting her response as fair and reasonable. Time is what we have now, he conceded. 15 years late, but time nonetheless. Before Elena could respond, The insistent ring of the phone interrupted the moment. It was Carmen, sounding agitated. "Elena, we have a problem," she announced without preamble. "Sandoval has changed the meeting location. He wants to see us at his hotel in the presidential suite." Elena frowned, immediately suspicious. "Why the change?" "He says he has other commitments and can't come to our offices," Carmen explained. "But there's something else. He insists that you go alone. He specifically said he doesn't want me to be present." Alarms went off in Elena's mind. The change of location, the insistence on seeing her alone. Everything pointed to hidden motives that went beyond interest in Esperanza services. "I won't go," she firmly decided. "If he's really interested in investing in our company, he can come to our offices as we initially agreed, and you will be present as my partner." "That's my girl," Carmen approved. "I'll communicate our position. But Elena, be careful. This man gives me a bad feeling." When she hung up, Miguel Angel was watching her with evident concern. "What's going on?" Elena explained the situation, confirming both their suspicions. Sandoval's interest in her company was just a facade for some other, darker purpose. "You shouldn't go alone to that meeting, even if he agrees to return to the offices," Miguel Angel opined. "Let me accompany you." Elena considered the offer. Part of her wanted to keep these aspects of her life separate, to protect the independence she had fought so hard for. But another part recognized the sense in facing this situation together, especially if Sandoval was trying to use her as a piece in some game against Miguel Angel. "All right," she finally agreed, "but on one condition. We'll make it clear that Esperanza Services is my company, my territory. It's not an extension of Nexus Technologies or an opportunity to vindicate your new business vision." Miguel Angel nodded, respecting her position. "Of course. I'll be there as support, nothing more." The phone rang again. This time it was Javier, Miguel Angel's assistant. "Sir, we have a problem," he informed with a grave tone. "Sophia has convened an emergency meeting of the board of directors. She's questioning your ability to lead the company, alleging erratic behavior and impulsive decisions that put the future of Nexus at risk." Miguel Angel closed his eyes, assimilating this new complication. "When?" "This afternoon at 3, Javier replied. "You need to be present, sir. If you don't attend, it could be interpreted as confirmation of her accusations." "I'll be there," Miguel Angel assured. "Prepare all the documents I asked for this morning. I'll need them for the meeting." When he hung up, his expression was a mixture of determination and resignation. "It seems my personal restructuring is encountering resistance faster than I expected," he commented with irony. Elena looked at him with concern. "Can they really question your leadership like that? You're the founder, the soul of the company." "Technically, I'm the heir to the founder," Miguel Angel corrected. "And yes, they can question it if they consider my recent decisions endanger the company's stability." He paused, reflecting. "Which, from their perspective, is exactly what I've done." "And what will you do?" Elena asked, genuinely concerned for him. Miguel Angel smiled, a smile that combined determination and serenity. "I'll defend my decisions," he responded firmly. "I'll show them they're not impulses, but conscious choices based on a new vision for the company and for my life." Elena admired his courage, but couldn't help worrying. "And if they don't accept it? If they try to remove you from your own company?" "Then I will have lost Nexus Technologies," he replied with surprising tranquility. "But I will have gained something much more valuable, the freedom to be who I truly am." The simplicity and depth of his response moved Elena. This was a Miguel Angel she had never known, a mature man who had learned, through pain and loss, to distinguish what is truly important from what is merely valuable. "I can't accompany you to your meeting with Sandoval," Miguel Angel continued. "But Carmen will be with you, and I ask you to be careful. That man is not to be trusted." "I will," Elena promised. "And you take care too. Facing a hostile board of directors won't be easy." They looked at each other intensely, aware that they both faced crucial moments that could alter the course of their lives forever. Without words, they shared a connection that transcended time and circumstances, a mutual understanding based on everything they had lived, lost, and perhaps recovered. "Good luck," Elena whispered. Miguel Angel nodded, and after hesitating a moment, leaned in to gently kiss her on the cheek. "To both of us," he responded before leaving. The meeting room at Esperanza Services had never seemed so small as when Victor Sandoval occupied one of its chairs. Tall, with a distinguished bearing and a smile that didn't reach his eyes, the international magnate dominated the space with his mere presence. "Mrs. Martinez, it's finally a pleasure to meet you," he greeted with a slight foreign accent. "Your reputation precedes you." Elena exchanged a significant look with Carmen, who had strategically sat beside her. "I didn't know I had any reputation in international business circles," she replied cautiously. Sandoval smiled enigmatically. "Oh, I'm referring to your reputation as a social entrepreneur. Your business model is fascinating, profitable and with positive social impact. Exactly the kind of investment I'm looking to diversify my portfolio." The words sounded correct, but something in his tone set off all of Elena's alarms. This man wasn't really interested in Esperanza Services on its own merits. "And why specifically our company?" she asked directly. "There are dozens of larger and more established social enterprises." Sandoval studied her with renewed interest, as if she had just passed some kind of test. Direct and perceptive. "I like that." He leaned forward. "The truth, Mrs. Martinez, is that your company has unique potential. With the right structure and adequate funding, it could expand internationally. Imagine it operating throughout Latin America, even in Asia." "That sounds ambitious," Carmen intervened, "but we like to stay true to our roots, working directly with the women in our community." "An admirable sentiment," Sandoval acknowledged, though his expression suggested he considered it naive. "But think about it. Multiplying your impact 100-fold, 1,000-fold, helping not dozens but thousands of vulnerable women. It was a tempting vision, precisely the kind of argument that could convince someone with Elena's values. But she perceived the hidden hook beneath the bait. "And what would you get, Mr. Sandoval?" she asked directly. "Because you don't strike me as the type of investor who is content with modest returns and the satisfaction of doing good." Sandoval laughed, a laugh that contained no real joy. "You are perceptive. No, I'm not content with modest returns, but there's something I value more than money: strategic connections." Elena felt they were finally getting to the true purpose of the meeting. "Connections with whom, exactly?" "With people of influence," Sandoval responded vaguely. "Your company has relationships with government entities, public contracts for cleaning services in ministries, access to information that could be useful." "Information," Elena repeated, finally understanding. "You're not interested in our company. You're interested in the information we have access to." Sandoval neither confirmed nor denied the accusation, but his expression subtly changed. "All business is, in essence, an exchange of information, Mrs. Martinez." He extracted an envelope from his briefcase and slid it across the table. "My formal offer. As you'll see, it's extremely generous." Elena didn't touch the envelope. "What about your interest in Nexus Technologies? Are you also looking for strategic connections there?" The mention of Nexus provoked a flash of something, irritation, alarm, in Sandoval's eyes. "My business with Miguel Angel Soto is a separate matter," he replied coldly. "Unless, of course, there's more than a professional relationship between you." The insinuation was clear. Sandoval perfectly knew about her history with Miguel Angel, probably also about Lucia. The question was, what did he plan to do with that information? "Mr. Sandoval, we appreciate your interest in our company," Carmen intervened firmly. "We'll study your proposal and communicate our decision." The message was clear. The meeting was over. Sandoval rose slowly, picking up his briefcase but deliberately leaving the envelope on the table. "Think carefully, Mrs. Martinez," he said as he headed to the door. "Opportunities like this don't present themselves twice in a lifetime." When the door closed behind him, Carmen and Elena exchanged tense looks. "That was disturbing," Carmen commented, breaking the silence. "He's not interested in our company," Elena confirmed. "He's looking for information, probably to use against Miguel Angel." Carmen pointed to the envelope. "Should we at least look at the offer?" Elena shook her head. "There's no offer worth the integrity of what we've built." At that moment, her phone vibrated with a text message. It was from Miguel Angel. "Board meeting over. Need to see you. It's important." The brevity of the message didn't allow guessing the outcome of his confrontation with the board of directors and Sophia. Had he managed to defend his position, or had he been removed from the company he had led for years? "I'm at the office," she simply replied. While waiting, Elena couldn't help feeling they were in the eye of the hurricane. The forces they had set in motion with their reunion seemed to be converging, creating a storm that threatened to sweep away everything in its path. Half an hour later, Miguel Angel arrived. His expression was unreadable as Carmen led him to the meeting room where Elena was waiting. "What happened?" she asked as soon as they were alone. Miguel Angel collapsed into a chair, exhaled slowly, and then, to Elena's surprise, smiled. "I've been dismissed," he announced with a disconcerting serenity. Or more precisely, "They've suggested I take an indefinite leave of absence while they evaluate my emotional stability and capacity to make rational decisions." Elena looked at him, horrified. "They can do that. It's your company." "Technically, I'm the majority shareholder, but not the only one," Miguel Angel explained. "The bylaws allow the board to temporarily remove the CEO if they consider his actions represent a risk to the company's stability." "And you consider it a victory?" Elena asked, confused by his apparent tranquility. "In a way, yes." His smile widened. "Because just before the vote, I signed and submitted the documents to officially recognize Lucia as my daughter and heir, legally, with all the rights that implies." Elena gasped. The implication was clear. If Lucia was legally recognized as Miguel Angel's daughter, she had rights to the Soto patrimony, including a significant percentage of Nexus technologies. "You did it without consulting me," she murmured, trying to process the implications. "I'm sorry," Miguel Angel apologized, his expression turning serious. "There was no time. I needed to do it before they could prevent it." Elena understood the logic, but the magnitude of the decision overwhelmed her. "Do you realize how this will change Lucia's life? Not just legally, but—" "I know," he interrupted gently. "That's why I want you and I to talk to her together, to explain what it means, and that we'll respect any decision she makes about her relationship with the Soto name and everything it entails." The consideration in his proposal partially calmed Elena's concerns. Miguel Angel wasn't imposing anything. He was offering options, recognizing Lucia's agency in decisions that would affect her future. "What about Sandoval?" Elena asked, changing the subject. "He's made it clear he's not really interested in my company, but in information he can use against you." Miguel Angel nodded, as if confirming something he already suspected. "Sandoval has been trying to destabilize Nexus for years to acquire it at a low price. Now that the board has temporarily removed me, he'll see his opportunity. And that doesn't worry you." "Not anymore," he replied with surprising tranquility. "If I lose Nexus, I'll build something new, something more aligned with my true values." Elena observed him with amazement. Who was this man who spoke of losing his life's work with such serenity? Certainly not the ambitious businessman she had imagined for 15 years. "What will you do now?" she asked. "First talk to Lucia," Miguel Angel replied. "After that, I have some ideas for a new project, something that combines technology with real social impact." His eyes shone with genuine enthusiasm as he described his vision, a company that would develop accessible technological solutions for disadvantaged communities, that would prioritize social impact over profit margins, that would employ vulnerable people, offering them training and real opportunities. "It sounds like Esperanza Services, but with a technological component," Elena observed. "Exactly," Miguel Angel confirmed. "In fact, I've been thinking we could collaborate, not as a merger or acquisition, but as equal partners. Your experience in social impact, my technological knowledge." The proposal hung between them, charged with possibilities that went far beyond the professional. "Are you suggesting a business partnership?" Elena asked cautiously. "To start with," Miguel Angel replied, holding her gaze. "The rest can evolve naturally." Elena's heart beat rapidly. 15 years ago, they had separated under tragic circumstances, victims of manipulations and lies. Now, fate offered them a second chance, not to resume where they had left off, but to build something new based on who they had become during those years. "It's an interesting proposal," she finally conceded. "But first, Lucia, we have to talk to her, explain what you've done and what it means." Miguel Angel nodded, perfectly understanding her priorities. Tonight then, together. The airport cafe where Elena had first seen Miguel Angel had ironically become their regular meeting place. There, watching planes take off and land through the large windows, They had their most important conversations. "I can't believe he tried to bribe her," Miguel Angel commented, indignant, as Elena related her second encounter with Sandoval. 3 days after the initial meeting, the international magnate had unexpectedly appeared at her apartment, offering her an astronomical sum in exchange for confidential information about government contracts to which Esperanza Services had access. "The worst was his veiled threat about Lucia," Elena continued. "Something about how it would be a shame if her new status as a Soto heir was tarnished by scandals." Anger transformed Miguel Angel's usually serene face. "He's playing with fire," he murmured. "No one threatens my family." The word family hung between them, charged with meanings and implications, because that's what they were now, an unconventional family, still defining its boundaries and connections, but united by bonds that transcended 15 years of separation. "What do we do?" Elena asked, practical as always. Miguel Angel reflected for a moment. "Sandoval thinks he has an advantage because he knows our secrets. But there's something he doesn't know." "What?" "That I have his. For years, Javier has been collecting information about Sandoval's questionable business practices. I never used it because it wasn't my style, but now—" "No," Elena firmly interrupted. "We're not going to descend to his level. There must be another way." Miguel Angel admired her integrity, even when it complicated things. "Then what do you suggest?" Elena reflected, remembering something Carmen had mentioned. "Absolute transparency," she finally decided. "If Sandoval thinks he can use confidential information as a weapon, let's eliminate that possibility by making it public." The proposal was bold and risky, but it made sense. If they voluntarily published the data Sandoval was seeking, after removing any sensitive information about third parties, his threat would lose power. "It's brilliant," Miguel Angel acknowledged. "And we can go further. Announce our new joint project publicly, positioning it as a natural evolution after my departure from Nexus. We'll take away any narrative he tries to build about impulsive decisions or emotional instability." As they discussed the details of the plan, Elena's mind couldn't help but marvel at how easy it was to collaborate with Miguel Angel. It had always been that way, even in their university days. Their minds worked in sync, complementing and enhancing each other. "What are you thinking about?" Miguel Angel asked, noticing her momentary distraction. "About how well we work together," she responded honestly. "It was always like that, wasn't it?" Miguel Angel smiled, his eyes shining with shared memories. "Always. We were a good team then. We are now." The moment was interrupted by Lucia's arrival, who joined them after her piano class. Since the night they had explained the legal recognition and its implications, the teenager had been processing the information with surprising maturity. "Hi," she greeted, kissing both on the cheek before sitting down. "What were you talking about? You looked very serious." "Strategies for handling complicated situations," Elena replied vaguely. Lucia rolled her eyes with teenage exasperation. "Mom, I'm not a child anymore. If this is about that man Sandoval and his threats, I have a right to know." Elena and Miguel Angel exchanged looks of surprise. How did Lucia know about Sandoval? As if reading their unasked question, Lucia explained, "Carmen told me when she called yesterday. She was worried because that man had gone to our apartment." "Carmen shouldn't have involved you," Elena began, but Lucia interrupted her. "I am involved, Mum. I'm part of this family. If that man is threatening us because of my new status, as Carmen says, I have a right to an opinion." Her determination and clarity left Elena without arguments. Lucia was no longer the child who needed to be protected from the complexities of the adult world. She was a perceptive young woman who claimed her place in family decisions. "You're right," Miguel Angel conceded, earning a reproachful look from Elena. "But you need to understand that the situation is complicated and potentially dangerous." He proceeded to explain, in terms that respected her intelligence but without unnecessarily alarming her, the situation with Sandoval, Sophia, and Nexus's board of directors. "So basically this man wants to use information from Mom's company to attack you, and now he's also threatening me because I'm your heir," Lucia summarized accurately. "And all this because you broke up with your fiancé and decided to legally recognize me." "Simplifying a lot, yes," Miguel Angel confirmed, impressed by her capacity for synthesis. Lucia reflected for a moment, furrowing her brow in a way that intensely reminded of her father. "Then the solution is simple," she finally declared. "I renounce being your legal heir." "No!" Elena and Miguel Angel exclaimed in unison. "It's not negotiable, Lucia," Miguel Angel added firmly. "You're my daughter. You have the right to your inheritance and to bear my surname if you wish. I will not allow the threats of an opportunist to change that. But it's causing problems for all of us," Lucia argued. "The problems are temporary," Elena assured, taking her daughter's hand. "We'll find a solution that doesn't involve giving up what is legitimately yours." "In fact," Miguel Angel intervened, with an expression that Elena recognized as a sign of an idea forming, "I think I just had an inspiration." He explained his new strategy. Instead of simply publishing the information Sandoval was seeking, they would use his interest as bait. They would make him believe they were willing to negotiate, in exchange for him withdrawing his threats and his opposition to Lucia's legal recognition. "But in reality, we'll be recording everything," he continued. "And once we have evidence of his intentions, we'll present it to the appropriate authorities." "Isn't that illegal?" Lucia asked, always attentive to ethical issues. "Not if it's done correctly and with justified motives of protection," Miguel Angel clarified. "Besides, I know someone in the Economic Crimes Unit who has been after Sandoval for years. This could be the opportunity they need." Elena wasn't completely convinced. "It's risky, Miguel Angel. If something goes wrong, nothing will go wrong," he assured, with a confidence that was contagious, "especially if we work together." The look they exchanged was charged with complicity, mutual trust, something deeper that was resurging between them despite the years and circumstances. Lucia observed this exchange with barely disguised interest. "You know what?" she commented casually. "If you're going to be partners in this new project and face all these problems together, it makes sense for you to be together in other aspects too." The declaration, so direct and lacking in subtlety, caused Elena to choke on her coffee. "Lucia!" she reprimanded, feeling herself blush. Miguel Angel, for his part, seemed to find the situation amusing. "Your daughter has a valid point," he commented with a playful gleam in his eyes. "Operational efficiency would increase considerably." "Operational efficiency?" Elena repeated, incredulous. "Is that what you call a potential relationship?" "It's the terminology I understand best," Miguel Angel defended with a smile. 15 years in the corporate world leave their mark." The three laughed, and for a moment the problems they faced seemed less overwhelming. They were a family, perhaps unconventional, definitely under construction, but a family nonetheless. And together, they would find a way to overcome any obstacle. "So, what's the plan?" Lucia asked, returning to the main topic. Miguel Angel explained the details. They would set up a meeting with Sandoval in a public but discreet place. Elena would carry a USB drive with seemingly valuable information, but actually innocuous. The conversation would be recorded by agents from the Economic Crimes Unit, who would be waiting to intervene as soon as Sandoval made an explicit illegal proposal. "And if he doesn't take the bait?" Elena questioned. "He will," Miguel Angel assured. "Sandoval is arrogant, and arrogance leads to mistakes. He believes we're cornered, desperate. That clouds his judgment." The plan was established. The trap was ready to be set. But as they discussed the logistical details, a familiar figure appeared at the cafe entrance, momentarily freezing the conversation. Sofia Mendoza, impeccably dressed as always, approached their table with determination. Her expression was indecipherable as she stopped in front of them. "Miguel Angel," she greeted with cold courtesy. "Elena, and you must be Lucia." Her gaze evaluated the teenager with barely disguised interest. The resemblance is undeniable. The tension was palpable. Elena instinctively moved closer to Lucia, protective. "What do you want, Sofia?" Miguel Angel asked directly. Sofia looked around before responding. "To talk, in private preferably." Miguel Angel hesitated, looking at Elena as if consulting her. She nodded slightly. Any information about Sofia's movements could be valuable at this moment. 5 minutes, Miguel Angel conceded, rising to follow Sofia to an empty table at the other end of the cafe. Elena and Lucia observed them conversing, noting the tense body language of both, Sofia's occasionally vehement gestures, Miguel Angel's increasingly serious expression. "Do you think she's on Sandoval's side?" Lucia asked in a low voice. "I don't know," Elena responded honestly. "Sophia has always prioritized her own interests. The question is whether those interests currently align with Sandoval's or with ours." When Miguel Angel returned, his expression was a mixture of surprise and caution. "What did she want?" Elena immediately asked. Miguel Angel sat down, still processing the conversation. "To warn me. Apparently, Sandoval has offered her a position in his company if she helps destabilize Nexus for a hostile takeover." He made a significant pause. "And he has specifically mentioned his plans to use information about Lucia to pressure us." "And why is she telling us?" Elena questioned, skeptical. "A week ago, she was furious because you broke off your engagement. Because Sophia may be many things, but she's not ruthless," Miguel Angel replied. "Using a teenager as a pawn in corporate games crosses even her red lines." "Do you believe her?" Lucia asked, once again demonstrating perspicacity beyond her years. Miguel Angel reflected before responding. "I believe she's telling the truth about Sandoval's intentions, about her own intentions. That remains to be seen." Sophia's unexpected appearance added a new dimension to their situation, an unknown variable in the equation, but it also confirmed the need to act quickly against Sandoval before he could implement his plans. "We must proceed with our original plan, but with more caution," Elena decided. "If Sophia is playing both sides, she could alert Sandoval." Miguel Angel nodded, his expression becoming more determined. "Tomorrow, then, we'll put an end to this situation once and for all." As they finished their meeting, making plans to meet the next day and finalize details, Elena couldn't help but think about how much her life had changed in such a short time. From an ordered and predictable existence as the director of a small company, a single mother with a teenage daughter, she had moved to being in the middle of corporate conspiracies, veiled threats, and emotional reconnections with the past. And the most surprising thing was that, despite the stress and uncertainty, she felt more alive than she had in years, as if the previous 15 years had been lived at half power, and now, finally, all the lights had been turned on again. The Plaza Mayor, with its mix of tourists and locals, provided the perfect balance between public visibility and relative privacy they needed for their meeting with Sandoval. Elena had chosen a table on the terrace of a historic cafe from where they could see anyone approaching. "You're nervous," Miguel Angel observed, briefly covering her hand with his. "Of course I'm nervous," Elena replied. "We're about to set a trap for a powerful and potentially dangerous man." Inspector Lopez, seated 2 tables away pretending to read a newspaper, had assured them everything was under control. 6 agents strategically located in the square monitored every angle, and the recording system installed in Elena's purse was working perfectly. Still, anxiety was inevitable. "Remember, we just need him to make his intentions explicit," Miguel Angel repeated for the umpteenth time. "The USB drive is just the bait. It doesn't matter if he takes it or not. What matters is that he clearly states what he expects to get from us." Elena nodded, mentally reviewing the script they had prepared. She would appear vulnerable, concerned about her company and Lucia's future. She would suggest being willing to provide confidential information in exchange for Sandoval ceasing his threats and his opposition to Lucia's legal recognition. "Here he comes," Miguel Angel murmured, straightening slightly. Victor Sandoval crossed the square with confident steps, impeccably dressed as always. The satisfied smile on his face suggested he believed he had the situation completely under control. "What a touching scene," he commented upon reaching the table. "The family reunited in one of Madrid's most emblematic places. It almost looks like a tourist postcard." The barely veiled sarcasm didn't go unnoticed. "Thank you for coming, Victor," Miguel Angel replied with calculated cordiality. "Please sit down." Sandoval took a seat, evaluating the situation with experienced eyes. "I must admit, your call surprised me," he commented, addressing Elena primarily, "especially after our last tense encounter." "Circumstances have changed," Elena replied, perfectly playing her role as a concerned woman. "Lucia is receiving unwanted attention since her legal recognition became public. Journalists camping in front of her school, speculation on social media. It's too much for a teenager. A true shame," Sandoval commented, though his tone suggested he found the situation more interesting than lamentable. Public life has its disadvantages, I'm afraid. We want it to end, Miguel Angel intervened, and we believe you could help us with that. Sandoval's interest visibly intensified. Me? And how could I do that? You have influence in certain media circles, Miguel Angel continued, and contacts on Nexus's board of directors. If you could discourage this kind of attention. I understand, Sandoval interrupted, a calculating smile forming on his lips. You want me to use my influence to protect the child. Touching. And what would I get in return? It was the moment they had been waiting for. Elena discreetly extracted the USB drive from her purse and placed it on the table. Information, she responded softly, about government contracts, future bids, confidential projects. Sandoval's eyes shone with barely disguised greed. From the technology ministry? He asked, trying to appear disinterested but failing miserably. Among others, Elena confirmed. Esperanza Services has access to restricted areas in several government buildings. It's surprising what you can observe while cleaning a meeting room after a confidential session. The insinuation was clear, and Sandoval immediately caught it. Information obtained in a non-conventional manner. It wasn't a question, but a confirmation. That could be considered industrial espionage, even corporate, you know? Which makes its value even greater, doesn't it? Miguel Angel intervened with apparent resignation. We just want Lucia to be able to live a normal life without media harassment or veiled threats. We're willing to pay the necessary price. Sandoval drummed his fingers on the table, evaluating the situation. And what about my original proposal? The investment in Esperanza Services? It could be reconsidered, Elena replied, maintaining the charade. If you demonstrated your goodwill by helping with this situation. Sandoval's smile widened, revealing the satisfaction of the predator who sees his prey voluntarily entering the trap. Let's be very specific, to avoid misunderstandings, he said, leaning forward. You provide me with confidential information about government contracts, especially those related to technology and telecommunications. In exchange, I use my influence to divert media attention from your daughter and facilitate a reconciliation with Nexus's board of directors. Exactly, Miguel Angel confirmed. And as a gesture of goodwill, this memory contains... Sandoval pointed to the device on the table. An appetizer, Elena replied. Information on the next bid for the ministry's digital security system. Names of the evaluation committee members, confidential criteria, reserved budget. Greed was clearly reflected in Sandoval's face as he took the USB drive and put it in his pocket. I'll need to verify this, of course, he commented, with false casualness. And if it proves as nutritious as you promise, we can talk about a more permanent arrangement. What kind of arrangement? Miguel Angel asked, giving Sandoval the opportunity to incriminate himself even more. A regular flow of information in exchange for continuous protection, Sandoval explained, completely abandoning caution. You provide me with valuable data about bids, contracts, and government decisions before they become public. I ensure that your little family remains safe and prosperous. Sounds like blackmail, Elena commented, maintaining her role but pushing him to be more explicit. Sandoval laughed softly. I prefer to see it as a mutually beneficial association. I get competitive advantages in my business. You keep your daughter safe from public scrutiny and, who knows, perhaps Miguel Angel even regains his position at Nexus eventually. And if we refuse? Miguel Angel pressed. Sandoval's expression hardened. Then I can't guarantee that certain information about Elena's past or about the circumstances of your daughter's birth won't reach the press. His smile turned predatory. The story of the Soto heiress, born out of wedlock and kept secret for years, would be irresistible to the tabloids. Imagine the headlines, the harassment, the speculation about the suitability of a teenager raised in such irregular circumstances to inherit part of a corporate empire. The threat was explicit, exactly what they needed. Elena and Miguel Angel exchanged brief looks, mission accomplished. As if on cue, Inspector Lopez appeared at their table, accompanied by two other agents. Victor Sandoval, you are under arrest for attempted bribery, extortion, and threats. The inspector showed his badge. Everything you've said has been recorded and will be used as evidence. The shock on Sandoval's face would have been comical in other circumstances. He looked alternately at Elena and Miguel Angel, understanding rapidly transforming into fury. "This is a trap," he exclaimed, trying to stand up, but the agents firmly held him. "You have no proof of anything." "On the contrary," Inspector Lopez replied, pointing to Elena's purse. "We have an audio recording of this conversation and your previous meetings with Mrs. Martinez. And, of course, the USB drive you just accepted contains not confidential information, but a file detailing your own illegal activities compiled during months of investigation." As the agents led away a furious but momentarily powerless Sandoval, Elena and Miguel Angel remained seated, assimilating what had just happened. "It worked," Elena murmured, almost incredulous. "It actually worked." "Of course it worked," Miguel Angel replied with a smile. "We were a good team in university. We're a better team now." Inspector Lopez returned moments later, sitting briefly with them to thank them for their collaboration. "We've been after Sandoval for years," he explained. "He's been involved in all kinds of questionable activities, from bribery to industrial espionage, but he's always been too careful to leave direct evidence. Until today." "What will happen now?" Elena asked. "He'll face charges for extortion, attempted bribery of public officials through illegally obtained information, and possibly conspiracy." The inspector seemed satisfied. "With the recordings we have, plus the information we had already gathered about his previous activities, I'd say he'll spend a good while away from business circles." When the inspector left, promising to keep them informed about the legal process, Elena and Miguel Angel were alone again. The square buzzed with activity around them, tourists taking photographs, locals enjoying the autumn sun, all oblivious to the drama that had just unfolded. "We should call Lucia," Elena suggested. "She'll be worried." Miguel Angel nodded, but before he could take out his phone, he took Elena's hand on the table. "Before you call her, there's something I need to tell you," he began, his voice suddenly serious. "Something I've been thinking about during these days." Elena looked at him expectantly, feeling a decisive moment approaching. "These last few months have been a roller coaster," Miguel Angel continued. "Reunions, revelations, threats, new beginnings. But amid all that chaos, something has become perfectly clear to me." He paused, as if gathering courage. "I love you, Elena. I never stopped loving you, really. Even when I believed you had chosen another path, even during the years when I immersed myself in work to not think about you, even when I was engaged to Sophia, a part of me still belonged to the bright-eyed student I met 15 years ago." The declaration, so direct and sincere, momentarily left Elena speechless. "I don't expect you to feel the same," Miguel Angel quickly added. "Many years have passed, we've lived separate lives, we've become different people. I just wanted you to know the truth, now that the truth finally seems to be freeing us all." Elena contemplated their intertwined hands on the table. 15 years ago, they had been two young people in love with shared dreams. Now they were adults with scars, with individual stories, with lessons learned through pain and separation. "And yet, I love you too," she finally responded, her voice barely a whisper. "In a different way, perhaps. More mature, more aware of all that can go wrong, but also stronger for that very reason, more resilient." The smile that illuminated Miguel Angel's face contained so much genuine joy that Elena felt her heart expand. "It won't be easy," she warned, always the pragmatist. "We have established lives, responsibilities, a teenage daughter who is processing enormous changes." "Nothing worthwhile is easy," Miguel Angel replied, gently squeezing her hand. "But this time we'll build something together, with our eyes open, knowing exactly what we want and what we're willing to sacrifice to achieve it." Elena nodded, feeling a mixture of fear and hope about what lay ahead. It wasn't a happily ever after from a fairy tale. It was the beginning of something more complex, more real, more satisfying, ultimately. "Step by step," she suggested, without rushing or grand public declarations. Giving Lucia time to adapt, us time to rediscover each other, the media storm time to calm down. "Step by step," Miguel Angel agreed. "Though I should warn you, Lucia will probably start planning our wedding as soon as she finds out." Elena's laughter, spontaneous and light, resonated in the square like a promise of better days to come. 1 year later. Madrid International Airport buzzed with activity as always, But this time Elena walked through it with very different feelings than that fateful afternoon when she saw Miguel Angel for the first time after 15 years. She advanced with determined steps toward the private terminal, occasionally greeting cleaning staff she recognized as part of Esperanza Services' team. Much had changed in a year, but some things remained constant. Her company still provided services to the airport, now with improved conditions thanks to the collaboration with Nexus Renewed, the new project Miguel Angel had founded after his definitive departure from his old company. At the private terminal door, Lucia was waiting, elegant in her school uniform, with a radiant smile. "Mom, you're finally here. Dad is already inside with the investors. He says they're just waiting for you to begin." Elena smiled, still marveled by the naturalness with which Lucia had incorporated Miguel Angel into her life, as if the years of absence had been simply a parenthesis, not an insurmountable abyss. "Nervous?" she asked, affectionately adjusting the collar of her daughter's blouse. "Me? Not at all," Lucia replied enthusiastically. "It's Dad who's nervous. I've never seen him check his notes so many times." They entered together the private conference room, where Miguel Angel was conversing with a group of international investors interested in Nexus Renewed and its innovative business model, cutting-edge technology combined with positive social impact, primarily employing people in vulnerable situations, many of them single mothers like Elena had been. Upon seeing them enter, Miguel Angel's face lit up. A year of gradually rebuilt relationship had softened the tension lines that previously marked his face, returning something of the idealistic young man Eleanor had known at university. "Just in time," he commented, approaching to briefly kiss Eleanor. "We were about to start the presentation." The investors observed with interest the family interaction. The story of Miguel Angel Soto, Elena Martinez, and their daughter Lucia had become something of a legend in Madrid's business circles. The powerful CEO who abandoned his empire for love and principles, the social entrepreneur who built a successful company from scratch, the daughter who reunited them after 15 years of separation. Of course, the media version romanticized and simplified what had been a complex and often painful process. It omitted Fernando Soto's manipulations, Sandoval's threats, now serving a 7-year sentence, the nights of doubts and insecurities as they rebuilt their relationship. But the core of the story was true. They had found a second chance where it seemed impossible. They had built something new and valuable from the ashes of the past. The presentation went flawlessly. Miguel Angel explained the technological vision. Elena detailed the social impact model. Lucia, surprising everyone, presented a section on incorporating young talent through innovative educational programs that she herself had helped design. When they finished, the applause and expressions of interest from the investors confirmed what they already knew. They had created something special, something that combined the best of both and promised to transform not only their lives, but those of hundreds of people in vulnerable situations. Later, as they celebrated the success of the presentation with an informal dinner on the terrace of the penthouse they now shared, a compromise between Miguel Angel's luxurious apartment and Elena's modest home, Lucia made the announcement she had been keeping as a surprise. "I've been accepted into MIT's summer program," she declared proudly, showing the email on her phone. "They only select 20 international students each year." The joy and pride on Elena and Miguel Angel's faces was indescribable. Lucia, at 15, was demonstrating exceptional talent for engineering and computational sciences, combined with her mother's social sensitivity. "This calls for a toast," Miguel Angel declared, uncorking a bottle of non-alcoholic cider specially reserved for important occasions. "To Lucia, the brilliant mind who will make us look obsolete in a few years." They laughed together, sharing that moment of simple but profound happiness. Across the terrace, Madrid stretched before them, its lights twinkling like earthly stars. The same city where they had met as students, where they had been separated by external manipulations, where they had reunited by chance or destiny, where they now built together a future they had never stopped dreaming of. Later, when Lucia retired to her room to call her friends and share the news, Elena and Miguel Angel remained on the terrace, contemplating the city in comfortable silence. "What are you thinking about?" Miguel Angel asked, noticing Elena's reflective expression. "About everything that's happened in this year," she replied honestly. about how something that seemed like a catastrophe, seeing you again after so long, turned out to be the beginning of something wonderful. Miguel Angel took her hand, interlacing their fingers as they had done so many times, first in their youth and now in this second chance that life had granted them. "Do you know what day it is today?" he asked softly. Elena nodded. "Exactly 1 year since our reunion at the airport." Miguel Angel smiled, pleased that she remembered. "A year in which we've built more than we built in the previous 15, he reflected. "Perhaps because this time we're doing it together, as it always should have been." From his pocket, he extracted a small box, placing it gently on the table between them. "It's not a ring," he quickly clarified, knowing well Eleanor's aversion to grand declarations or grandiose gestures. "Not yet, unless you want it to be. It's something more symbolic." Intrigued, Eleanor opened the box. Inside was an old key, which she immediately recognized. The key to the first house they had dreamed of building together, a symbolic key that Miguel Angel had commissioned when they were students as a promise of a shared future. "You kept it all this time," she murmured, moved, "just as I kept hope, in some corner of my heart, that someday we would meet again," Miguel Angel confessed. "Not as the idealistic young people we were, but as the people we have become, wiser, stronger, more aware of the value of time and second chances." Eleanor held the key between her fingers, feeling its symbolic weight, the bridge between past and future it represented. "I still think we should have a large garden," she commented with a nostalgic smile, remembering the conversations of their youth about the house they would someday build. "And I still think we need a library that takes up an entire wall," Miguel Angel responded, playing along. "And Lucia will insist on a laboratory, not just a simple study." "Naturally. She is our daughter, after all, ambitious and practical in equal parts." They looked at each other in the half-light of the Madrid night, aware that what they had built in this year, renewed trust, mature love, shared plans, was more valuable than any physical house they could imagine. Step by step, Elena recalled the promise they had made a year ago, without rushing. "But together," Miguel Angel completed. "That's the only non-negotiable part." Elena nodded, placing her hand over his. "Together," she confirmed, sealing the promise with a kiss that contained the wisdom of the years apart and the hope of all those ahead. Above them, the Madrid sky filled with stars, silent witnesses to this love story interrupted and resumed, of second chances and new beginnings. A story that, like the old key now resting between them, demonstrated that some connections are too powerful to be permanently broken. They just pause before resuming with renewed strength and meaning.